Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Fire's Fire. As always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, Dr. Brian Paul and the very talented RJ Ellis. We have
What's up, everybody?
super exciting show for you today. I'm incredibly excited to have our guest on. The first and likely one of the only non-makers that we'll be bringing on the show ever. A true hash connoisseur in a sea of people faking being hash connoisseurs. Multiple-time Cannabis Cup judge, pioneer of lab testing in cannabis at a commercial scale, and now the founder of 800 Pound Mantra, a solventless consulting company. Without further ado, we'd love to bring on Addison, aka terphova. Addison,
Turk Bay.
Welcome, brother.
Thank you for joining us, my friend.
What's up, man?
Thanks so much for taking the time, bro. I think you're muted.
I got him. I got you. No worries.
You're good. You're good.
There you go.
So I'm not gonna lie. I did a little bit of research, and so what we usually do to start off the show is just we want to learn more about you, where you came from, what your beginnings were like that brought you to this point. So, born in Silver City, aka Christmas City, Taunton, Mass. I know you mentioned in previous interviews you started smoking in '88, so it's 33 years ago. Was that with your brothers, or tell us more about that first experience? Did you get high? What was that like?
Damn, that's putting us all to shame, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm old, man. I turned 48 on February 6th. So, but long time ago in 80. So I have two older brothers. So my parents, my family is a mix of two families coming together. So my dad had a daughter and a son, and they were older. And then my mom had two daughters and one son. So they came together and had me and my sister. So now you have 7 kids in this massive group, and all at different ages too. So because they were older, my dad's kids, they were kind of out of the house by the time I became conscious of what was really going on. And but I had two older brothers, so one of them had already left the house. My other brother, Jimmy, also left the house, but I had these two older brothers as an influence. So it was I think it was a conversation where it was hey, I was complaining about having to pay for weed because I would buy weed for my brother. And he was like, well, why don't you buy some weed and then sell most of it? And I'm like, oh, okay, this is an interesting concept, but I still didn't even know what that meant. So it finally came to the point where he was like, look, just take this whole bag. It was like an eighth. He's like, take this. And it was brick weed. It was trash. He's like, roll this into as many joints as your friends, feel are acceptable size, and then go sell those and then bring the money back. And he kind of introduced the concept to me. So I was able to get an understanding of it. And then after that, it was like, oh, wait, this is genius, So, and then Biggie, came out with the song, don't get high on your own supply. There's all these things that just kind of dropped. So it's it helped out a lot. But
was it like an instant love connection where, at a young age you were like, oh, this is for me and I'm with this and this is it going forward? Or was it sort of a slow roll where you
for all the wrong reasons?
Yeah,
for all the wrong reasons. Just for because it was I was the youngest of 7 kids too. So I wasn't really getting bankrolled on a lot of shit because there's so many kids. So it was when I started selling weed and got good at it, I had money. And then it was oh, I could just buy, school clothes. School clothes were one thing because, my parents would be like, all right, you get school clothes. And it would be this minor event. And then I could be like, well, so it was all for the wrong reasons. But at the same time, I lived in, when I was at that age, I had moved up to Newton in Boston. So by then it was kind of around a lot of kids played sports and stuff and kind of gravitated toward the stoner kids that played sports. So I was always able to sell weed. It was never a problem, but those were good days. I think right after that, I got in trouble. I was just a crazy ass kid. So I got in trouble and then was a ward of the state to DSS in Massachusetts, and then went into like group home shit for like, 2.5 years.
Real trouble, real shit.
Oh yeah, like real, like like incarcerated as a youth. But I mean, I laugh about it now because it's like I can laugh about it. But there's a lot of good things that come from it. Like I'm really neat and clean because of that, I think, and like I'm like institutionalized in that sense when I was young. So, but no, it was a pretty dark and shitty point in my life, especially being a kid. And then the whole reality of it that like, if you are a ward of the state, then like your parents are essentially giving you to the state. So it was kind of fucked up. But no, I mean, I've obviously not in the group home anymore. So, but there was a short period of time where I did that and then went back to Newton and finished school. So
Do you think that structure in the long run was beneficial for you?
Oh yeah. That was the only structure I ever had in my whole life.
I did military basic training when I was 17, and
cool.
I don't know why I did it, but I always say like that was the thing that made me like very specific and very like I don't know, built in that structure as far as like knowing what you have to do and getting it done. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear someone that's on the flip side, not necessarily on the whatever.
I got super lucky because when I exited the whole thing, they had this Knowles Outward Bound program, so I was able to like benefit from that shit, and then learn about all kinds of different cool ass shit, and went on these really cool trips, and then exited, because you graduate from these programs eventually, and it was just like, yeah, it's weird because I gravitate now towards like a lot of weird military podcasts and like highly structured weird shit. That's just I just feel more comfortable. I don't know. It's like being a lab rat that like gets to be free, and then you get old and you're like, you know what? I kind of like this little fucking lab rat space though. But yeah, and then so I think after grew up smoking pretty young, but didn't have no boundaries whatsoever. Like I was able to just like get done with sports and then go to someone's house and then just go home whenever. It wasn't like I was expected to ever be anywhere or any of that stuff. So, but what's cool about that too is that I feel like I've always been free my whole fucking life. Like I've been able to just, kind of do different shit. And I've done like crazy stuff in the sense where after I graduated from high school, I left and didn't see my family for like 5 years. I was just like, you know what, I feel underappreciated, and went on like Dead tour and fucking, and went on like further tour with friends, but actually end up meeting like some of my really good friends now, and like it's put me into like really interesting situations now from those days even more. But that's what's kind of introduced me into that culture, and just sort of and then now what I saw was, I was like, oh wait a minute, this is a fucking traveling city that just goes, and there's all these different levels of vendors from wholesale down into retail. And just, my brain always worked that way. So it was like, we went and did tour, and we were like, having fucking, boxes shipped to hotel Motel 8s, and like, oh, the t-shirts are in, and like, we were fucking going hard. So it was like, got to do that shit and did that. And then had a blast doing that shit and kind of learned that culture. And then eventually just came back. At that time I went out to Boulder and lived in Colorado for some time, and then met some of my good friends now that I still work with, like James from Chiba Chews and a lot of those people, and just traveled and did whatever the hell I wanted, and just kind of had a blast. And then finally settled down in California in 1998. So
from what I understand, originally a lot of that, or some of that travel, was motivated by snowboarding. So when did snowboarding come into your life, and when did you start doing that seriously, or taking that seriously?
I mean, snowboarding is one of those things where, like, I think it was roughly the early, like 1990 or something, when the first, because we had by my house, we had this really big sledding hill, and it was a giant hill that was off like the side of this, across from where our school's campus was, and everyone would go sledding on snow days there. So it just sort of turned into, 1 year when you get there, like some dude had a snowboard, and it was a Burton, and it was like, oh fuck, what's that? And then it kind of sparked the whole, early on, kind of sparked the whole like idea of it. But then I'm a kid living in Boston, living in Newton. There's not a lot of places to snowboard. It wasn't really a reality for me. So as I got older, I had friends though that were from Vermont and places like that, and I got to go and and had skied at first and kind of enjoyed that. But then when I went to Colorado, I just started snowboarding a bunch with friends, and I was athletic, and I just was I was able to just kind of I was better than the people that I was learning with, and I just got felt like I was like, oh, my athleticism transfers over to this. I can do this. I did gymnastics and played football and ran track and did all other shit when I played sports. So I think the gymnastics really helped. And yeah, I just got into snowboarding. Loved
Wait,
it.
what kind of gymnastics did you do?
I did the floor. I did floor. I did the what's it called? Not the uneven bars is like women and shit, but I did the floor, and then I did the
parallel bars.
Parallel bars, yeah. So I did that mostly, mostly floor. That was like what I liked the most, like tumbling and just getting into that kind of shit, and had a blast, like had a fun time, and then transferred a lot of that shit over to trampolines and learned how to like rage trampolines and have fun like that. So when I started snowboarding, I just liked it. It was cool, and I could do it. When I got to Colorado, there was a lot of opportunity to do it.
What did you ride, Addison? Were you riding park or pipe or backcountry or slalom?
I like backcountry the most. I like big mountain riding and just kind of getting to just use the whole thing and have fun. But a lot of my friends were riding park and fucking slaying park and just getting crazy. And I never was super comfortable like hitting big ass kickers, and it all seemed so produced. Like, oh, okay, well, if that dude was feeling this way that morning, and so, and it just was really kind of weird, but I prefer just, big mountain riding, just kind of nollie off a knoll and kind of fucking ride and just have a lot of fun, just moving fast. That was the thing, like going super fast. And so when I got to finally left Colorado and got to California, I was with the girl that I was with's parents. Her father worked at UOP. He was like the head of finance or something at University of Pacific in Stockton. So when it came time for her to like go back to school, she's like, oh, I'm going to go to UOP. So I'm like, well, let's go to Stockton. And I had known this rep that I had spoken to, who was a rep for Rosignol Snowboards. I'd known him, and he lived there in Stockton. And I don't know how I knew him. I think I knew him from like, he was on like a business trip in Colorado or something, and me and my friends had met him. And he was a pretty relatively cool ass dude. Like, I think we just met him somewhere, and he gave me his card. So I hit him up. He lived in Stockton. So I talked to him, and right away, I'm there in Stockton. I just left Colorado. I've got a bunch of like money that I brought with me because I stopped trapping in Colorado and came. I didn't know anyone in Stockton. I'm kind of like, all right, like, what am I going to do? And I had time to snowboard. So I hit him up. He got me into some gear. And then he and I were talking, and he's like, you know what, you should fucking you should like get a job at one of the shops here so you can meet other reps and then try to get sponsored. Like, he's like, you're pretty good at snowboarding. You should do it. And I was just like, whatever, man, that sounds cool. Oh, a job that I can like cover up my other shit with, like, fine. I'll be that guy in Stockton. Like, that sounds cool. So I just went ahead and took the job and start working at this snowboard shop. And I don't even think they wanted me to work there at first. They weren't even like, they're like, who the fuck is this guy? But the owner, or the guy that ran the place, was this Portuguese guy, Greg Santos. He was super cool. And he just gave me a job, let me work there. And then by working at that snowboard shop, I got to know other reps, and then got like, from that guy, Ron Depp, got like a regional sponsorship, and then was on some like, quote unquote, like regional snowboarding teams and things like that. And technically, was never like a featured professional snowboarder or any of those cool things, but, got to like got to snowboard with a lot of like really good snowboarders and go on crazy trips and do a ton of shit and have a blast. And then quickly just started working with the companies. Like, the people that I knew from those companies were like, you know what, you'd be really good at sales. You should just fucking come in. And I just worked promotions for DC and 686. And worked with Skin Dog and did Volcom stuff with them for Volcom Snow, and just had fun and loved to snowboard. So they pretty much I was a rep for 686 and DC, working for Terry Campion. And then I would get to just do all these other things. And we worked with, I actually worked with Ron Craig, the rep that helped me out when I first came out, and worked for Rosignol Snowboards for a while. and had fun with, like, worked closely with Christine and like their whole team. And then Omar, who Omer Sar works in cannabis now, but he was working with Rossignol as well. He had the same job that I had as like one of the tech reps working with the company. So, but yeah, snowboarding. I haven't snowboarded since my son was born, so I should probably go at some point. But I don't think you really forget how to snowboard. So I'm not too worried, and I'm in better shape now than I was then. So I'd probably do better at snowboarding now. So I'm looking forward to it. I think me and Alex from Resin are gonna go this at some point. So
how long ago was that? When was your son born? I was going to ask you about that later on.
he's 17 now.
Oh
So,
shit. Yeah, I'm almost in the same boat. I don't think I've actually like skied or anything in almost like 20 years.
yeah.
And it was just one of those things where it was just wasn't part of my life. So actually, to that end, best hill, best mountain, best run that you've had in the world.
Oh, man, I'd have to say Mammoth for sure. You know, like Mammoth is one of those places where you would get to go on the right day or be there for the right reason. Utah is really nice too, but I'd have to say California, probably Mammoth. Yeah.
So
That was my favorite.
Coach Brucey is disappointed in us for not skiing and snowboarding anymore because he is a ski coach, professional ski coach.
I'm down to go. I just like, I have so much, there's so many things that I'm doing now. And then like I actually went and pulled a bunch of gear because at that point, you get so much free shit and like dope ass stuff that your friends are working for companies. And I had like all the greatest shit. And then I broke my stuff out now and I'm just like, oh, I got some 32 boots and some Volcom pants and like some other shit. I'm like, God, I could just go snowboarding pretty easily. So I think I have a full setup and yeah, I'd love to go. Like it's not something that I've purposely been like, nope, going to lay off for 17 years. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. I think I'll have a fucking blast actually. So.
And I was gonna say it's not because you stopped because of injuries, because you were like busting ass in the half pipe or on like some of these massive like 100-foot jumps.
No, those are. I mean, I've hit some big ass jumps and done some fun shit, but not consistently, and never got a name for those types of things ever. It was like I was in snowboarding. I was probably better known for like having really good weed than like anything else. Like in that community of people. That was probably because that's the one thing that was always been a part of my identity, So when I was going to say when I graduated from high school in Newton, or I was in Newton my junior year, and my parents come to me at the end of the summer before the school year starts, and they're like, "Hey, we're moving to New Hampshire, so you probably want to either like you could just like move in with a friend or something or whatever." And I'm just like. So my sister, I was actually like not sure what I was going to do anyway. And my sister lived in Fall River, and she was like, if you want, you come live down here, so at least you have a place to live. And then Durfee was in the Big Three, which is one of the bigger divisions for sports, for high school sports down there in Southern Mass. So I was like, all right, well, and I was born in Taunton, and I'm like, Fall River's Southern Mass, so fuck it. So I went. And my coach that I played sports with in Newton knew the coaches down there and was like, oh, yeah, I could totally like, open some doors for you. And he's telling me, he's like, you have a better chance of getting a scholarship if you go down here. So I transferred to Durfee in Fall River. And as I start going to school there, and then I went there for 1 year, walked on and played football with them. And then ended up doing really well in track, which is just kind of weird because I ran track before, but I was never like great in track. And then when I moved down there, I started doing the 200 meter. And then at the 200, I was really fucking good. So I ran the 200 meter and then went to the nationals with them that year, which was really cool. And then got a scholarship offer for Salve Regina University for football and track, which was pretty dope. But when I went to the school there, you check in early, you go in and you're in the football program. It was their first year ever having males. It was like this all female nun-derived university that finally.
Is this the start of a porn movie?
No, this is real. Like this is crazy shit. And listen to this. So it's in Newport, Rhode Island, and it's based in these mansions on the fucking shore of Newport, Rhode Island, and it's this dope ass university. And it was the first year they were going to allow men. So I think they were open to like having this crazy football program, and they invested a lot of money in it. And they also had a new track program for men. So I got brought in on a scholarship for a split scholarship for both. But unfortunately, and when I went, right, so I'm selling weed, like going crazy, you know, all the way up until like football camp, like everything. And then as soon as I, you know, my one brother's like, listen, like, don't blow this, you know, just go there and fucking and take advantage of the opportunity. Don't sell weed. Don't do this shit. And I had quite a bit of money saved up. I'm like, you know what? I'm with you. That's what I'm going to go do. I went there with that intention, like fully, and accomplished it too. Like went there, had nothing to do with any of this shit. I'm walking back, and there's a lot of scholarship athletes that they brought in that were from all over the place. And Rhode Island's a pretty rough place in some areas. And there was this kid named Otto Quay, who was he was like an outside linebacker, but really cool ass dude. We're walking back to the after practice. We're walking back to the dorms, and then going to go and eat with everybody, and then we're going to go back and watch films again. I'm walking with them. There's these two girls with them, and we go back to the dorms. They go into the dorm. I stand outside. I'm like, well, you know, whatever. They come out. Otto comes out. I see Otto. We go on our way. 2 days later, I get called in by the university, and they're like, oh, you know, we want to ask you about some stuff. And I'm like, sure. And I didn't know this. None of the football players, none of the track guys knew this, but the fact that they had opened up their roster to men and done all this stuff, they had some people on the board that weren't really happy about it at the university. So they were looking with a lot of scrutiny at the football players and other guys that were coming in. And now they have these fucking savage men coming into their campus. So anyway, I got pulled into this office, and I go in there, and they're like, oh, hey, you know, it's so I want to ask you some questions. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck this is. I'm like, all right, maybe they do this to all the scholarship athletes, whatever. Because I'm not aware of this other bullshit that's going on. And right there, they're just like, yeah, did you go by the dorm a couple days ago? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, do you know who this girl is? And I'm like, I don't recognize the name. There's two girls. I don't know their names. They're like, oh, well, these girls said that you sold them marijuana. And I'm like, no, I don't. And I said, I don't want marijuana. Like that's. And then the question is like, you know, if someone came to you and asked you, you know, would you be able to tell them where they could get marijuana? And I'm like, this is a college campus. Like, yeah, of course you could. Like, you know, that's what college campuses are, you know. So I'm honest. I answer their questions. I leave, and they kicked me out of the school and pulled my scholarship and said that because they busted. What happened was the two girls got busted smoking. One of them had a family member that was like on the board or something. So try to get her off. They created this whole scenario where it was the horrible drug dealing fucking football players. And it was like sacrificial lamb. So when this happens, this is why I'm telling this whole long story. So when this happened, at that point, literally, I was like, you know what? I'm just meant to trap. Like I'm not meant, because I didn't do anything, you know. Yep. At the moment, it was like
it's a sign from God.
I was knighted by the trap lord at that moment. It was like ding, ding, and fucking. I was like, all right, well, if I'm gonna do anything in life, I'm just gonna get in my lane and do what I do best. And I just, at that point, just left there, went out to Colorado. Actually, it was a more interesting journey. I left there and then went to Arizona. Went from Arizona over to Seattle. Came from Seattle back to New Hampshire, and then went from New Hampshire to the Bahamas. And then was in the Bahamas, oddly enough, for like maybe like 4 to 6 months.
Just having a good time, or what brought you there?
One of my friends from Arizona had a deal with Club Med, and when I was in high school, we all worked at a bakery. One of my friends' parents owned a bakery, so I knew how to bake. So when I went and was looking into this Club Med thing, they're like, oh, we'll hire, any baker experience will actually, you get more money and you get all this cool shit. And I'm like, fuck. And it was me and a bunch of friends were like, let's go. So our one buddy, Chris, was he was a clown, like a circus clown for them. And he went to like circus clown school and shit. He was just a fucking crazy ass dude. Very cool ass cat. But yeah, that's how I got into the Bahamas. Went down to South Florida with Club Med, and then went through their program, and then they're like, all right, you're gonna send you somewhere, and they just sent me to the Bahamas. So I was there for probably 4 months.
That's awesome.
Maybe like 4 or 5 months. Was just worked in the Bahamas, and then left the Bahamas, went to Colorado to Boulder, stayed in Boulder for a couple years, and then from there in '98 I moved to California, And then in 98, I moved to California. In 2008, we founded Steep Hill. So.
But let's rewind a little bit, because there's the Oakdale Natural Choice Collective that you had played a big role in. So can we talk a little bit about that, and what prompted that move from Colorado to California, and then how quickly did you become involved in that collective, and how did you become involved with that?
Yeah, so before Oakdale Natural Choice, there was a dispensary that was in Modesto that was owned by Luke Scarmazzo and Ricardo Montes. And that dispensary, I was working with those guys and essentially, providing a lot of the medicine that was going to that dispensary at the time. I think it's been longer than statute of limitations. So anyway, I had been one of the providers for those guys based on like a network that I had. So when I got to California, I got into production, distribution, transport. Got into my buddies had a grow shop, so I was figuring out that like, oh, there's these houses I can rent, and I can have this fake landscape company, and I can do hey, okay. And so I incorporated myself in that way and kind of was doing that, and then just was taught how to grow indoor, learned a bunch of different stuff, got into the cannabis culture that way. And then after doing that, I ended up deciding like, all right, you know what, man, like this is great, you can make a shitload of money, but I was going to the dispensaries in the Bay and I was selling everything to the dispensaries. So I knew BPG. I knew, all the dispensaries that were there. We were the ones that were coming and actually vending a lot of the indoor, and a lot of other people. It wasn't just me, like it was fucking everybody. So, you get your OCBC card in Oakland, and you go and like put your paperwork up in like 20 houses and you fucking bang out, and that's what a lot of dudes did. So I was growing my own stuff, providing medicine for that dispensary with those guys. Cause I was in Stockton, they were in Modesto, which was like, it was actually like a nice short little drive, back roads, you could tell if you were being trailed. And that was kind of the time when like you laid fucking low. So I would go do some drop offs, do some stuff with these guys. And I knew them. Well, they got raided. And once they got raided, I knew their whole staff. I knew a lot of people that worked there. And I knew both of them really well. They got raided and just had the book thrown at them. One of them got 27 years, 22 or 23 years. The other one got like 22 years. And one of them was exonerated by Obama, but the other one wasn't because he had I think he had a previous charge that prevented him from being exonerated. So, or that's what they had kind of said. So he's still in prison now, but hopefully Luke Scarmazzo gets out soon. It sounds like they're kind of, smartening up on some of that stuff, hopefully, especially with so much legal stuff going on. It doesn't make sense, but so they raided those guys. And when that happened, a lot of the workers that were there, a lot of the guys from security all the way into intake, into the front people, I knew everybody that was there because I was so close to those guys. Just shortly after, I was like, you know what? I think I like woke up in the morning and I heard on this local radio station that Oakdale, the city that I lived in, because I had moved to Modesto. Met this girl, moved to Modesto, had a kid, and just got out of Stockton altogether, and was like, I'm gonna settle down in the country. and anyhow, quickly met a bunch of good people in Modesto and was kind of doing my thing there. And then after they got raided and everything went down, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I think I'm gonna, I woke up and I heard they were like, oh, Oakdale's the only county, in Stanislaus that doesn't have a moratorium on cannabis dispensary. And it was sort of a joke that like, oh, it's because it's so deep in the county, no one in their right mind would fucking try to open a dispensary here, And me, my dumbass, I'm like, oh, I'm going down to City Hall and getting a fucking business license today. So I went down there and got a business license for Oakdale Natural Choice Collective. And then like the next day I'm looking for a location, and, 25, 30 days later, I'm getting the walls put up, and, and then I think 45 days into it, we were ready to open, had a business license, and we did a cannabis dispensary there because I had so many contacts and connections and friends like Etienne, who owned BPG, and all these people that I knew that had dispensaries. And so I knew how to do it legally, even to do it legally to the point where if you came and raided me, I was going to sue you and win. and we would have set precedents and changed law. That was kind of what was in mind at the time. It would never be in mind now. I was just a fucking idiot, but I was almost like, oh, this is a lottery ticket. I'm going to pick it up, like this is, in my mind. And so I opened the dispensary, and then I think like, fuck, maybe like 45 days into it, they raided the dispensary. They raided my grow that was in Oakdale. They raided all the employees' houses. They fucking, went nuts and went crazy. Luckily, it wasn't my first rodeo, so I was able to, had some assets and things. It's the funniest thing is when they raided me, I had a bunch of weed inside of the grass catcher bag inside of the lawnmower in the garage, which is like the greatest place ever to keep weed if you have to. But yeah, so I had a bunch of weed in there. I had like 30 pounds or something in there, and they raided my fucking house, did everything, and then I got home and I'm like thinking, like I went right to the garage and I'm like, yes. And it was, nice perps that was there preserved and helped me kind of get my footing. So, and that's what helped me get my lawyers and all my other shit taken care of. So here I am, like, this is what's crazy. So I get released, I go and I find this weed and I'm able to kind of do these things. And then maybe 10 days later, they came and raided me. They came and fucking arrested me again.
What?
And now they were coming to arrest me for the dispensary charge.
Sounds like just harassment now.
Oh, total fucking harassment. And we're talking like good old boys. Like, this is Oakdale, California. They're like, oh, really, boy? We're going to teach you, boy. And you're like, all right, bud.
You and your marijuana.
Yeah, And at this time, I'm educated on what the law is. And I've seen cases set precedents. I've seen counties get flipped. And I'm just like, all right, well, I'll be the spearhead. Let's, and these dudes are just eating it up. Like, this is a gateway drug, boy. And like, fucking, I was like, oh, this is going to be an easy one. It took 6 years, so it wasn't easy. But what happened was they tried to cripple me. Obviously, I had that, the weed there. I was able to pivot. I also had Ed Rosenthal helped with his program that he had for like California, people who'd been raided and stuff like that. And that actually introduced me closer to Ed. Once I met Ed and his wife, Jane, they brought me closer to like Jeff Jones and Todd McCormick and Dale Garinger and a lot of the activists that were in California and Berkeley at the time, like, directly connected to San Francisco and the big scene that was kind of coming out of there. So it was nice. I had, and then, seeing Etienne, who was an activist, but also a dispensary owner, that kind of helped me because he's like, oh shit, you got a case? Oh, okay. And he respected me because the weed was great. And then he was also on the activism side. So it kind of helped out a lot. And then Rob Raich was my attorney at the time. And so Rob Raich actually came to me and was like, hey, I've got a guy on the board of the Medical Cannabis Association that I think you should meet with. And he's like, I can pay you to be the I don't know what the fuck I was. I was like the president of the Medical Cannabis Association. And it was just a way for like Rob to like give me $2,000 a month and let me like get more deeply rooted in activism so I can kind of use that to help with my case. So I'm living in Oakdale, but moved over to Oakland and was actively working for MCA and met with David Lampak, who ended up being my business partner in Steep Hill. And we just were brainstorming about different ways to be able to raise revenue for the Medical Cannabis Association. I mean, every association at that point wanted to introduce standards into the cannabis industry to fucking, to do whatever. And we were just part of one of those groups with the MCA, but it was really well connected with a lot of different activists. So Dave and I, because we came onto this through MCA, we're sitting there thinking of ways to raise revenue. And the idea was like, oh, well, shit, we should raise some funds and just set up our own pot lab. And Dave's like, Dave's a smart son of a bitch. So he's like, oh, gas chromatograph, mass spectrometer. Like, oh, Agilent. Like, Agilent's right here in the bay. I'm like he would be that dude's fingers went crazy. And Dave just starts deep diving in and he comes back to me and he's like, you know what? Like, we're just sitting there smoking weed on his farm in Mendocino one day. And he's like, we can do this. And he's like, I'm going to show you how we can do this. And I went up there and spent the weekend, spent a couple of days with him and we just went over it. And in my mind, I'm like, we could do it. But, Dale Garinger, Jeff Jones, a lot of the Bay Area activists, they had all gotten together and done some tests on tea and some Bang that they made, Bang tea. And they had tried to get it tested and they weren't able to get a THC percentage from it. And we figured out later on why. But anyhow, it was because the THC binds with fat and they weren't able to separate the sample to get it prepped to be able to actually do the test. Anyway, so we heard about this crazy time when they tried to get stuff tested and they couldn't get it. But we also knew who El Soli was at NIDA, which was, in Mississippi. They're testing fucking cannabis for the DEA. So you're not going to tell me that there's not methodology. So through Ed Rosenthal, luckily Ed's close with them, Ed and Jane. And I went to Ed and was like, hey, Ed, you need to fucking hit up El Soli. And like, Ed just gets on the phone and calls El Soli. And next thing you know, we've got like confirmation that what we're going to do is actually possible. And there is methodology, and there's Sigma Aldrich, and you can get standards from Sigma Aldrich, but you got to watch out for this. And so now we're like onto something, And then the other cool thing is we're sitting in the fucking Bay. So we're in the birthplace of counterculture in the United States. And we're also in Silicon Valley right there. So there's a lot of money, a lot of counterculture activists at the time, like John Gilmore, who was from Sun Systems, who was very close to Debbie Goldsberry. When they heard about our program, they just came to us and were like, okay, well, we're going to hire a chemist. And they put Paul Daly, who was with Sasha Shulgin. Paul Daly came in and wrote all the methodology for the testing that we did. So it was like a weird fucking like mystical.
Like how important was that piece? Was Paul Daly to the
major?
Yeah.
Major. Because before that, it was really me and Dave with a really great idea, a lot of the public support and a lot of the industry support. But BPG and Harborside were paying us to test their cannabis, and the numbers are coming back so high and out of range. And it was just at that point, if we didn't have that support, we would have never got off the ground to the next phase. Yeah. And that was when, BPG had to they had their own internal stuff going on and all these fights. So Harborside just was like, you know what? And Steve, being Steve, he's like, I want to be the exclusive, the master of testing. So Steve got involved with us, really came to save the day too. I mean, I love Steve. He came and helped us and put the money behind the initial part of the program and brought us to England to meet with a bunch of different, Steve really got behind it and really supported Dave and I and supported it and helped us keep the whole thing together when we were in Emeryville. And then eventually we moved right up the street from Harborside because that was our primary customer that we had. But then at that point, I got to test my ability as a sales rep and all those years in surf, skate, and snow. And that's what I did for the company at Steep Hill. I was the founder with Dave Lampak. So he and I had founded the company together. But then I did all the branding, sales, marketing for the entire company. So that was all the sales that came in, every account that we locked in. And I just was like, all right, I'm gonna build loops, which I'll break out to regions, and I'll list all the dispensaries in that region, and I'll go to the furthest one and work my way back and sign up accounts and maintenance those loops. And I did the same thing that I would do if I was a surf, skate, and snow rep selling fucking socks. So, but it was weed. So it was something that I already knew. And like a lot of the dispensaries I knew, and I had relationships. And what was cool is at the time, there was no testing. There was no THC percentages on anything. There was no mold testing, no pesticide testing, nothing. Not at all. There's a really cool article from East Bay Express that was written by David Downs before he became cannabis industry David Downs that outlines Steep Hill at the time. So whenever I meet people who try to be like, oh, this lab was first or that, I'm like, actually, the internet was alive and well. You can go to this article, and it talks about the first cannabis testing lab. It actually outlines Dave and myself and everything that was really happening at the time. And like George Bush it was the stupidest thing to ever do, because George Bush was kicking down fucking doors of dispensaries and going hard. And me and Dave are like, how do we, in our mind, we're like, how do we come up with something that's going to protect us? It's like, you're the only ones testing fucking weed. You're not protected. You're actually more of a target, it seemed like. So, but we got help, and a lot of guys made it happen, and we were able to launch it and became the first to do, potency testing, the first to do mold testing, pesticide testing, residuals. There were other labs popped up. Josh, who was with Steep Hill, left Steep Hill abruptly and went and opened SC Labs. And so it was really a cool place, a really dope, a lot of, I learned a lot, from all kinds of things, especially with, I have paperwork on my desk here, founded Steep Hill, worked there for 6 years, commuted 3 hours minimum every day for, 4 of those years. And really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. Owned 25% of the company, was one of the founders. And I have some paperwork here now that shows that to date, I own roughly $1,000 for my efforts in Steep Hill because of just crook ass investor, people coming in. And you think about it, cannabis testing is such a great idea. But the main reason why I got out of it, the main reason why I'm not even going to fill out the paperwork and claim the $1,000, I don't care to roll those dice anymore. I'd rather be like the guy who fucking spent the Bitcoin on pizza and he could own Manhattan. Like, I'd rather be that asshole than the guy who actually fucking gets the $1,000.
100%, bro.
Yeah, 100%. It's a story, man. It's just, so Steep Hill, in the big picture, what it became was a great idea, which entices clean investors because it's on the science end of it. It's on the quality control, quality assurance side. Absolutely. And every investor in the world, when they're going to initially put money into cannabis, if it's a testing lab and it's for quality assurance and it's regulated by the state, that's a great fucking investment, right? Absolutely. Well, they did it in a way where they diluted the founders, and long story short, instead of 25% of I'd say like a $30 million company, $28 million company, I've got $1,000. So I'd rather, it's one of those situations where I'm like, you know what? I think you guys need the money more than me. You can keep the $1,000, roll your dice on that. At first I was like, shit, I'm going to take it and just get Bitcoin, right? And then just let Bitcoin ride, and then maybe it actually will do something. But I'd rather take my own money and get Bitcoin and let that ride than fucking take that blood money from that. Because what testing really is this, and this is why, and I'd say this to anybody, testing has a lot of human error because humans have to be involved in the dilution of the sample from the actual product that you're taking. And because these kids that you're hiring, they love cannabis and testing, and they're sciencey kids. Well, you're paying them fucking $16 to $22 an hour, maybe. The head of all the techs might make 22, and they work in a cannabis lab. They're like celebrating it. A lot of them are stoned. You can't be stoned when you prep samples because, in any fucking way. Like, you need to be a straight Christian, and if you're a straight Christian and you do it, you're still gonna fuck up because human error is gonna happen over repetition every single time. And the weight of the sample that you're creating is different from this. And it's really a lot to do. So that human error exists. But once it exists, every lab out there wants to deny that because there's so much cost in that error that they have to in some way make sure that some of it slips through because they've got to cover costs. And that's really the fucking problem. None of them have enough money and investment to really do this. And some people will try to argue with me on this, but tell me, any person who's ever turned in samples to a lab knowing their shit, who's really done their homework and gotten some crazy fucking results back, that's what that is. That's human error. And it happens. They try to deny it. You might have a cool lab that's cool the first few times. But if you're a huge manufacturer like 710, you get a $40,000, $30,000 bill every month from the lab. And you're trying to, to make sure that money's being spent correctly. And the problem is that it's just such a fucking, everyone's trying to PhD up and be the science of cannabis, and all these fucking things. It's like nature's the science of cannabis. Like, don't come at me with you're not bringing shit to the table, monkey. Like, calm down, eat some mushrooms, fucking come back to the drawing board because most of us are fucked. So you don't know what you're talking about. So I kind of wanted to be away from all that, but luckily running, looking at mass spec, GCMSs and looking, HPLCs and looking at this equipment run. And I fell in love with like the preparative HPLC and how it was able to just take waste and turn it into raw compounds again and just have a system running with waste, not fully waste, but a broken down version of waste that then you're watching these glass jars, these beakers fill up with crystallized CBG and crystallize this. And then you're like, well, there's some THCV there. And, or the chemist brings you some THCV and I'm in my office and I'm fucking dabbing THCV or dabbing like raw THC and getting to do that. And I'm like, wait, this is all separation. Like, this is just, sure, ice wash, ice water is mechanical separation. Some of this is chemical separation. And then really fell in love with BHO and how BHO is extracted. And the fact that I was really hung up on the fact that you could take any cannabis plant, any strain, and you can blast it and have something to dab. You can sit there and taste all and really work it and really taste all the representation of it. Where if I was going to wash it, and again, too, at the time, and, back then, people were washing shit and they're like, hey, look at my brown hash. And you were like, oh, and, it sucked. It was not like, Cuban wasn't Cuban back then. And these guys weren't, there was no Vessel Life Science. There's none of these fucking dudes that have really been able to then all tether up with these equipment companies and Whistler Tech and Icon and fucking make this crazy shit to match the, now you're seeing mass produced hash that's fire as fuck, like separated heads, beautiful shit. So I fell in love with all of that stuff. And like, really, I figured out the other day, I was in the shower and it's someone, people have asked me about hash and be like, oh, do you love hash? And I'm like, I love hash, but I think what draws me to hash is that I love beauty. That's what like the sunrises are. That's what like the ocean pictures are, the nature. I love beauty, and something about hash, even the plant, when you understand the love that it takes to grow the best fucking plants, there's love and there's this energy there, but there's beauty in all that, and then there's beauty in the harvesting and understanding to make it for solventless, and then there's beauty in making it, and then you make it and it's fucking beautiful. Like you smell it and it smells beautiful. Every bit about it is amazing. And then you if you're lucky enough to have amazing, I call it like terpene analysis equipment. If you have great fucking pieces of glass that have amazing quartz systems on them that are allowing you to use, a slurper's a column. Yeah. That's what the fuck that is. You built a column that runs upward, that pulls itself upward. So you're just like a GCMS, you're fucking splitting that shit up and breaking it down at temperature now, separating at temperature so that you can try it and get the flavor of it. So
it's just a wiper.
It's
just a wiper.
It is.
Before we jump ahead into hash, I have a couple more questions about testing that I want to kind of wrap up with. And so in all legalized states and countries, we see issues in the analytical testing, at the point of analytical testing for a variety of reasons that we don't really need to touch on because everyone in this room knows. Yeah. And you've experienced firsthand. And so as someone with probably more experience than anyone in operating in multiple jurisdictions under multiple different regulation regimes in the testing space, do you have any opinions, feelings, thoughts, or suggestions on how we as an industry can address these issues or what the path of least resistance forward is?
Yeah, you gotta just be realistic. Everyone has to be realistic. The person turning in the sample needs to be realistic. The lab themselves need to be realistic. The regulators who are creating, these impossible, regulations in some places, they need to be realistic. It's like, Boston, when they first started, they had this whole thing about radiation and radiation levels in cannabis. And they gave out all these licenses and they start producing cannabis in these fucking brownstones that are sitting in the sun. And then the radiation levels are through the roof. And it's like, oh my God, the radiation levels through the roof. And then some guy grabs a potato from Whole Foods and fucking hits it with the same reader. And the radiation on the potato is 5 times of what the cannabis is. So it's like, just be realistic.
Microbial limits that are ridiculous to adhere to. In Canada, you can have more microbials on the outside of your tomato than you can on your cannabis. And
well, there's, I love when they started going crazy about regulations in regards to microbiological contamination in the grow room. And I saw this and I was just like, that's a slippery road, because for the plant biome to exist and work correctly, you need to bring in these teas. You need to bring in these micro beasties, and you need to have fucking fusarium on your foot and, aspergillus on the wall. Like it's part of how the plant grows. It's the curing process of the finished flower that gets rid of all that stuff. It's not in the fucking space that you grow it. It's like, what do the amazing powers of acai, but the jungle's dangerous, so we're not going to fuck with that anymore. It's like, come on, man. Like it's accidents, right? Like, so it doesn't make sense. So there's that. Be realistic, be realistic about things are going to happen. If all this money's being made, okay, create a fund for insurance to cover a mistake if it does happen. So now you can move forward and explore and push the limits and figure things out so that you can have a better system. The labs, be realistic in a sense where you understand what it is that satisfies your customer. When I worked at Steep Hill, that would drive me nuts. I'm like, oh, you want to satisfy the customer? Inexpensive testing, accurate testing, in a quick time. Ta-da! We're fucking done, dude. Yep. Give me my results. Have a great day. And then when regulation came in, it became even more, now, like when I was at Steep Hill, we didn't have anyone spending $30,000, $40,000 a month. Yeah. Like that's common now for rec business, for some of these bigger guys. So, it's not everybody spending that, but some of the companies, you know, you've got labs now that give out free R&D testing to the companies that do their finished testing with them, which means like, you know, they'll come to your lab and your type 6 and pick up all your fucking tests for you and run pesticide, this and that, all just in your just regular non-controlled R&D test in an effort to win your business at the $260 pesticide screening and fucking all the regulatory, you know, shit that has to happen for the finished product to be done. So, you know, be realistic and just understand that it's not the gold rush that you think it is. You know, you're not coming in. These fucking people think that they're going to, most people, you know, money investors in cannabis think they're going to come in and outsmart the stoners. And it's like, dude, we're not those stoners.
Yeah.
These are Jedi stoners. These are like fucking sleight of hand Yoda ninja Jedi stoners. Like this is the guy with the biggest lungs you've ever seen, that smoked the most THC, that's grown the biggest buds, because it's all Mavericks now. It's, you know, it's like, I love, you know, you asked about Marcus and Bubble Man and, you know, the partnership with him and all those great things. And I love the analogies that he uses because his fucking life is hash, top to bottom. And, and when he talks about people, he's like, you know, the heads, man, like the better microns, you know, you're just sifting the heads and get them all in one room. And like, and I love those analogies because that's what we are. We're these sensitive little heads filled with with these compounds. And, you know, you put a bunch of us together and you make great stuff. But yeah, gotta definitely have had a fucking blast with the testing stuff. And like, really the best part about all that, it's not the money. You know, I was able to make some money at one point and did pretty well. You know, was happy with what I did, but you know, it wasn't the walk away that I thought it was going to be, like the knockout walk away fucking award show with the gold chains or anything like that. But it definitely the accolades from doing it, like you know, because science dudes, when I meet those dudes, they're like, oh fuck, great, you know, great to meet you. And so you have that
yeah, that's me, man.
Yeah, you have respect from science dudes, like you have respect from these cats, like. And then you have respect from cannabis guys, and then it's rad. Like it's actually business people, because it became business, and we learned a lot about business and a lot about taking companies public and doing this shit. So I evolved from, you know, a grower, cannabis industry guy that was a broker, smuggler, you know, got into some breeding shit, into a business guy that understood business. And then, you know, I've said it on many occasions, like when legalization happened, my main job was to figure out business faster than the business guys figured out cannabis. That was it. And I knew if I did that, then I'd be all right. And like, I got lucky and I got hired, you know, met Kevin Flynn at Advanced Nutrients, who was the president who hired me there. And then I got brought in at a C-level, you know, which is like great fucking money and a lot of overhead power. And you get to learn like how a company actually runs. So I got that schooling at the same time I was in cannabis. You know, and Advance really wanted to be in the cannabis industry. So my job was head of business development, which was just lining them up only on the cannabis side. I didn't even have to, they saw that it wasn't worth their money to use me on the nutrient side. Like you can't, what am I going to do at a grow shop? You know? So it was like, oh no, okay, interact with the cannabis industry for us. So that was everything. I did all that stuff with them and, you know, helped soften the blow and build relationships there. And then we launched 11 licenses in Los Angeles and had, you know, we started launching brands and product lines for Big Mike. And, you know, every product had to have his face on it. And, you know, it was some stuff that really wasn't, I would say, my lane or what I wanted to do. And then randomly, you know, that whole program, everything we had there kind of fell apart. Everyone went their separate ways. And that's when, you know, Kevin Muse, who was with me there, who came over, Kevin was with Raw in their early days and worked with those guys. And Kevin came over with Chemo, who's also up north. And we all, you know, Greg, one of our other buddies, and we just were like, all right, what are we going to do? And Kevin Flynn came to me and actually, you know, talked with me and was like, look, you guys should start a management consulting company. You know, that's what business development is. Like, that's kind of what you do. So, you know, make it so that you can, and I'm like, okay, like this kind of makes sense. And, you know, went to Kevin and the rest of the guys and we, you know, I was like, all right, well, I'll do it, you know, and I went and formed the LLC and named the company. And, you know, 800 pounds mantra it was originally, the idea was like 800-pound gorilla, like something strong, something fucking just that's like unavoidable in a space. and the space being the cannabis industry. And then I just thought that like 800-pound gorilla was too much. I was like, that's a little fucking too much. And then there already was like an 800-pound gorilla. So I was like, all right, there's already one of those in the room, and that doesn't make sense. And then I was like, you know what about like 800-pound mantra? Like a fucking turn it around into like, you know, a force of energy that gets shit done, a guide, a path, you know, kind of a way through something you don't understand, through, you know, vibration and energy. And that's when it just kind of came up with the name 800 pounds mantra. But it is 800 pounds mantra is how it's actually said. So like, and it's purposely that way.
I was going to say, that's not an error. That's not an error.
No, it's not. It's not. It's 800 pounds mantra. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more detail about the group you've put together? I know you touched on Kevin a little bit, and I know he was with Raw when they were ramping up, but I think that you've put together quite a cool team. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about those guys.
Yeah. So it just, you know, we started out with initially started with I think like just general consulting, you know, and then we were looking at different ways to be able to generate revenue. And one of them was, you know, we knew a bunch of makers and we knew a ton of farms, and we were like, oh, we knew a shitload of distributors. So we were just like, all right, let's work on the fringe, but let's figure out how we can kind of interact and put everybody together, you know, biz dev. And one of the things we came up with was, you know, the sale of fresh frozen. So we kind of came up with that idea. And it was originally myself, Kevin, Kimo Kiawe, and Greg, Greg went back to the East Coast, Greg Dobbins. So there was originally us. We started together and kind of, you know, of course I put together the LLC and built everything and brought the guys in, and then set up a deal with them where I said, look, you know, you guys, for the first 2 years, if you guys vest and put the work in, and, you know, whenever revenue comes in, I'll pay you guys as consultants, and we'll build this thing together. And after 2 years, you guys will get X%, and we'll kind of build this thing together. So after 2 years, Kevin was there standing with me. Kimo had a lot of stuff up north that he wanted to do and take care of. So he just was like, you know, I have opportunities up there. I can't, you know, sit down here in SoCal and starve with you guys. So so me and Kev just kind of strapped on the helmets, and you know, still with help from Kimo and help from other guys, we came up with the concept of Pyramid Pipeline, and then also my good buddy James, I mentioned him earlier, from Chiba Chews. I've known James forever, and Eric and David and those guys. Ooh. And those guys actually were really helpful. They came to us and gave us an opportunity to manage Chiba Chews in California. So we do all the brand, we do management for those guys in California for their production and distribution. And that was one of the first gigs that we got. So that was kind of able to help us. And then we did probably about 6 months consulting with Lifted, with those guys, the flower producers, work with them. And then now we do Grandiflora with those guys. We're doing helping them with like a lot of back office stuff, more like, you know, getting their, you know, making sure they're paying attention to the 8300s and, you know, different, or 8600s and things like that, like different tax stuff that they have to make sure that they're doing, because they're a distro, and they also are manufacturing and distributing a lot of stuff that's being produced that's proprietary genetics. So we work with those guys as well. And then through Pipeline, it just kind of blew up, and sort of, you know, it would just evolve in these conversations we would have, me and Kevin, and we would talk about, like, you know, how the fuck do you, like, we would sit there and smoke hash, and it would just be the same hash all the time. And we're just like, dude, what the fuck? Because at the same time, it would be conversation with, you know, Aaron from DNA, and Aaron would be like, oh, I'm smoking on this, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like, how come you haven't put those seeds out? And then there's a million reasons why those seeds are not. Then you'd be like with, you know, talking to, you know, people in like Chris from Compounds Camp, and they would have some crazy shit. Or you'd see Brandon from Third Gen, and he would have some nutty ass shit. Or I'd see Taylor from T-Beazle, and he'd be fucking smoking on some telling me like, all this shit's a 9% yielder. And I'd be like, what the fuck, dude? Like, why are none of these genetics? And it kind of came to us that, like, the breeders are really good at breeding. And some of them, they're not all Edgar. They're not all Mace. Like, they're not all really good at marketing, you know? So because of that, we realized, like, oh shit, we could act as a conduit and help a lot of them. Like, what do we have here? Like, we're friends with the breeders. They know us. They trust us. They know that I can get in the room with them. Like, I could sit with them, and pretty much any one of them, and get in the room with them. So the idea came about where we were like, well, how about if we go to the breeders and say, hey, there's not one of you that we don't know that doesn't have a bunch of genetics sitting around that are viable for the solventless market, that you just haven't put the marketing behind, that you'd be willing to give us if we promise to you that we'll get them into the washrooms and get it into the conduit, into the supply chain, essentially get it into the supply chain. So then we're like, every one of the breeders we talked to was like, yeah, here's my whole catalog. Like every fucking one of them, you know, from Corey, from Cannabis Corey to everybody that we talked to, Taylor fucking came, you know, it was, you know, the guys up at North Coast Genetics to just everyone, you know, everyone that we talked with, all the guys that got involved. And they still keep coming. Like we still keep getting guys that are like, they love the idea because it's sort of a dance floor. It's a conduit for them to put their genetics into, to get it into the supply chain more quickly, to get it into the washrooms, to get it into the market, to get the attention of X, whether it's the consumer or 710 or whoever. That's how you're going to do it. You know, right now, some of the coolest shit we see is, you know, 710 and Brad and those guys with the Randy Watson and the fucking, you know, it's like, it shouldn't be left up to the manufacturer. I mean, bless them when they do, but like, come on, breeders, like there's an opportunity here for you guys to do this. So we realized the breeders trust us. Every one of them that we went to agreed. They're like, here, take the seeds as long as you're going to put it in. And, you know, but then we start thinking about the rec market and you have to have a nursery. There's no way to get these genetics into our supply chain and system without a nursery. So we started digging and worked. We've been probably working 9 or 10 months now on it, but we've got a partner, a nursery partner. They have 130 acres as well throughout the state, mixed light, greenhouse, outdoor, and you know, they're killers. You know, they got 30 acres of greenhouse, and they're just good cats. Like they've proven through these months and months of like slow churning and proof of concept and all these things with them, they've just come back multiple times and proven to us that they're great partners and they're patients on a number of things. And, you know, so we work really well with them, and we develop pipeline to be a program where breeders can put genetics in. We give the genetics to the nursery. In order for a nursery to work, the nurseries have to be able to pay the rent to keep the plants in the building. That's just what a nursery is. It has to be viable. So if we build a pipeline, pyramid pipeline, so that now every person in the state understands, oh, anything that comes through pipeline is going to be at least a 4% producer for the solventless side. And it's the place where they're going to churn and push out the old strains and bring in the new stuff. And that pipeline, that little beautiful system that we put together, it's completely open source. So the breeder's happy because they get their genetics to put in, to go through, to get out to the mass. The nursery's happy because they get new genetics. They get new stuff that they try and see how it's going to grow and how it's going to work and how the market's going to like it. We like it because we work with them, the farms, in effort to make the sale and get everything to the makers. The makers like it because they get new material, brand new genetics that come in. And then, of course, our greedy ass on the other end of it gets better hash. And that's the whole cycle is all open. You know, the breeder's not getting paid to put their genetics in. The nursery's not having to pay for the genetics, but the nursery's not getting paid for its time to invest in the propagation of the genetics, to get them out, to get everything going. So everyone's investing their own energy and effort into it. The end result is to make, you know, to open up a strong pipeline, like a black hole of terps that genetics can be tossed into and can blast out into the market quickly, so that they can end up into the washrooms and give, you know, what it also does is it gives not just the established breeders, but young breeders, guys that are just getting their chops, an ability to come up and step forward and say, hey, I bred the blah, blah, blah with the yachty do, and I made the yachty do blah, blah, and here it fucking is. And it washes at 8.5%. And it's like, all right, well, let's put it in pipeline. And it could be the launch of someone's brand. It could actually be something that like puts somebody on the map. And what it can do is it can get genetics from a no-name breeder into a, you know, $150 million, you know, manufacturing production company's genetic base, and then put those genetics out to the entire market. And then if you're just a kid sitting at home and you're 21 years old and you love hash, now you can go and track the genetics that are coming. You know, we have 46 brand new strains from those breeders that I talked about that are coming. Now you can track the genetics into pipeline, and you can track those genetics to your local dispensary where they get put through. All you got to do is make sure that they're coming from this nursery, and then that they, you know, and then you track them. Now for your 6 plants in your yard, you can have those 6 plants growing in your yard, 6 different strains, all at least 4% plus bangers. I mean, Taylor has some stuff that's 8.5%. some shallot sashimi crosses, some Fofana crosses. They're fucking, I mean, even Mace with like the Sour Diesel Wilson cross. Like some of this shit is like 7% banging out beautiful fire ass hash. And like, and it's always been, a lot of it's been there. Like Slee Stack is one of those strains that produces more resin than anything else. Been there forever. It's just the focus on it. And so we've created pipelines so that we can now have that specific focus, like a laser focus on what's coming in. So
do you guys have any minimum requirements on breeders? I mean, because we've talked about this a little bit, and we're going to be talking to Ross Kaya again in the future. He was sick, but what do you think about people that are coming out, say, with new crosses or untested crosses, and what is your requirement to be involved in that? Because I think it's amazing you're allowing these young and new breeders and people really with the passion to move the terps forwards, basically. But what's the requirement? Can you talk about that, and what does it go into to make something that you guys would accept to actually put out there into the nurseries and farms?
Yeah, currently, like right now, the requirement for this first round is it's really like the guys. There's no one in this first one, this first round, this first year and a half that's going to be any of those young crazy guys. Those young crazy guys, I'm seeing them kind of come forward and want to be, but they're not truly vetted as far as where. I mean, we want pipeline to start strong, and we want to make sure that we have, genetics from people that are fired up for it. From Corey to to just, there's a lot of stuff in there from a lot of guys that we know personally are able to bring that sort of fire to the table. But then there's also guys that aren't even in pipeline. So that's what's great about this, is that if your genetics are out and they're there, then they can get into pipeline. Just like, so Compound is not part of pipeline. Like we know Chris, and Chris is a ally, and those guys are friends, but they've never come to us and said, hey, put this in or put that in. But they're constantly coming onto our radar, and we have a friendly relationship with them. And then some of the farms partners that we work with have their genetics, and it's good. And then so what it shows us too is that you don't have to be in pipeline as a breeder to get to popularize your stuff in pipeline. Because if it washes, if it's above 4% and it washes, if it's unique terps and people like it, it has a varying phenotypes that are in it that are going to be better in different regions in the state. Things like that are what qualifies it. And if it's been washed and it's been done, and you got to just pick your head up and look at, the makers are, you can focus on makers to find out certain things. You can focus on breeders to find out certain things. Those are the whole hash world is those two looks, one in each eye at all times. And you can kind of start to see what's going on and get a strong understanding of what's happening. And like my heroes are like, the Real Cannabis Chris and like fucking Resin Ranch and like, cats that are just about what they do, that love what they're doing, and like, Brandon.
Ones that we hope to talk to as well on the show.
Yeah, like,
I want to switch gears a little bit, because I think there's an 800-pound gorilla in the room that we haven't talked about, and that's back to hash in general, and that's Legends of Hashish.
Yes.
I think that's like probably one of the biggest talked about, not talked about things, like it's this secret society type thing. And it's like, how did you become involved in that? Actually, let's go back. When was your first experience with it? And how did you get to that first experience?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to, for the early High Times years as a grower during that period of time, we would grow and make a bunch of money. And then when the cup would happen, we'd fucking, fly out there and stay at the best hotel and go to the High Times Cup and be like, all right, cool. And buy a bunch of seeds and bring that shit back. Cause that was like the safest, like most secure way to get your seeds. And you could be standing at a booth in Amsterdam and Shantu Baba could fucking open a bag and be like, yeah, this is the wheat. Because otherwise you kind of were getting ripped off, it was like you weren't sure. Or you could go to Don and Aaron's booth and they'd be like, yeah, or Adam from TH Seeds and see the Burmese Kush or see something like, and then you could hit the coffee shops, smoke a bunch of it and be like, okay, I'm fucking buying these. And like, that was, as a grower, it was one of the smartest ways to do it. So I'd gone and just established friendships with, those guys I just mentioned, like met Adam from TH Seeds and, met Don and Aaron from DNA and, in the process, started to kind of talk with the people at High Times, and got to met Craig and his wife and Danny, and started to meet these people because you kind of be there and see them. Oh, nice. And just get into this place where you're kind of after like I think it was probably like my fourth year going or third year going, and kind of made friends with people and sort of knew people, and you'd get in there, and what I noticed was there was this fucking Canadian dude, this tall, crazy Canadian dude who would like walk around with like some of the heavies though. Like he was with like Sam the Skunk Man and Mel Frank. Like he was with like the big dudes, and he knew like the biggest cats because this dude was Bubble Man. It was Marcus, and I was like, oh shit, that's that guy with the bags, and whatever. And then come back to the United States when I was a rep in surf, skate, and snow. A friend of mine introduced me via I think it was like a phone call to Marcus because they needed a rep for bubble bags to go to grow shops. And I was a rep traveling all over the place, and I was a grower. So I was like, oh, this sounds like a fucking interesting opportunity. And I think
what year was this?
This was 2000, I think. Yeah, I think this was like 2000. And what it was that there was a snowboard dude that I knew that was a rep that somehow was the rep for bubble bags in Tahoe. For Marcus's brand in Tahoe. And I was like hanging out with them, and I showed, we were friends, we grew, and I showed him my grow, and I showed him my bubble bags. And I think I had a small set of bags. And he's like, oh, dude, you need to get the big ones. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, check this out. He's the rep. I'm like, what the fuck? So he's like, oh yeah, I'll hook you up. He's like, wait, you should do this territory. So anyway, long story short, he introduces me to Marcus. And I was actually the rep for bubble bags in like the Bay Area and like Stockton and all that shit to go to the grow shops and like sell them their bubble bags, because that's who would like buy bubble bags and sell them at that point. So having known him that way, and then go, so then the next year when I go to the Cup, I'm like, Marcus, what's it? So now I know him, I spoke to him on the phone, and that's when I kind of started to recognize that like he would walk around with Sam and those guys, and they'd have laminates, and they'd be numbered, and they would just walk up to people, and people would show them hash, and they'd give them a laminate, and they fucking move on. And what it was it's really based off of old Indian culture and Hindu culture, and it was a pilgrimage that went to a certain place, and all the farmers would go, and then at the end they'd all put their hash down, and they'd smoke, and they'd declare a winner using a specific method to find a winner. And it was very communal, very fucking pilgrimage kind of thing. And that's what it's really based off of, for history wise and why they did it. But what it was initially was before I saw it, and I saw him handing out laminates, all these guys go into the Cup. What I didn't realize was there are guys smuggling in the weed that was going to be sold in all the coffee shops for the actual Cup. So there are some dudes that were heavies that were bringing a shitload of stuff to town that would then, like cash out at the end and be like, woo, and fucking the real party was like when those dudes partied. So this was their party kind of for like all the smugglers, all the real heavy dudes. This was that party. And you had to be like a fucking breeder or a huge smuggler or, Soma's fucking towel boy or something to get into these things, dude. Like you couldn't get into this shit. But I got lucky. I, met Don and Aaron, and I guess what it was is I met Don and Aaron, and then Aaron was like, something happened, and he's like, yeah, you can come with me. I was like, motherfucker. And I went and finally got to go to the first one that I ever went to. And I still have a laminate.
So what year was your first one? Do you remember?
I think like 03 or 4 maybe.
Okay.
I think that might have been, I think it was yeah, I think it was 03 or 04. Maybe, yeah. Because we started Steep Hill in 08. So it was maybe like 05, 04. But this one. And then I have a couple others. So I went three or four times, I think. I went 4 times because I went to the one in LA. So LA was my 4th one. So I ended up getting to go to him, and it was fucking insane. Like, because I didn't know what it was, but Aaron's like, bro, this is fucking, like hyping it up to be all crazy, and I'm like, oh fuck, and I go, and it's like this super dimly lit space, and everyone gets in there, and it's just a gathering of those people, and there's everyone brings their offering, and the offerings are all laid out and everyone consumes and just has this celebration. It's like a really cool ass, nothing's sold, nothing's, crazy about it. It's very communal, very super fucking raw, just fun, good times. And yeah, was involved in that one on that level, being a guest. And they have this wubbly bubbly pipe that's like a traditional Afghani pipe that they put like 60 grams of fucking melt in at a time, that like lights your lungs on fire. And like,
can you explain wubbly bubbly?
Dude, so in Afghanistan, it's super hot, right? So they get cover from the sun, whether they're in like a cave or fucking whatever they got. And then they dig down in the ground and they put this pipe down into the ground where it's cooler, where the water is. And then the bowl comes up out of the ground. And then behind the bowl is this long fucking stem that you suck on. So it takes a lot of like very fucking like sucking fucking a golf ball through a garden hose kind of a thing. But it generates so much fucking smoke at one point that now you're like biting mouthfuls of smoke, like this shit just hits you. And they had like a stool and you'd go up there, like it was like Navy SEAL fucking.
Oh, so this is like a big like fucking.
Oh, they had one there. Yeah. So you'd get to go. And
how big is this thing? Like, is this feet tall? Like a couple feet tall?
Yeah, you'd like step up this little fucking ladder thing because of course now you can't bury it in the ground and like tilt back and shit. Dude, it was fucking insane in this restaurant, and the guy would like let him do this, And anyway, and it would fucking just blow up the place with smoke, like chara smoke in the air, and we're talking chunks of resin. Like people were proud to walk up and give this dude a giant chunk of resin to fucking throw in this thing and light 50 heads on fire. And what was cool about it is, if you remember that period of time, Marcus and Mila were kind of battling as like the presenter of the bubble bag technology and all these things. But Marcus would still invite Mila to the Legends dinners, and they would go there and get lit and just have a blast. And like, that's what's kind of cool. Legends is that level of like hyper, cannabis analysis tomfoolery that fucking goes to another level, because it's really originally started as like this very communal, open sort of thing. But then fast forward to talking with Marcus and knowing him and seeing where Legends is and where it wants to go. Marcus owns it with Sam the Skunk Man. And they're the originators of it. 20 years of legacy with it. And they would pay for it out of their pocket every year. And it was this thing where you just went and ate and fucking got to be a part of it. It was really cool. So when you bring that to the United States, when you bring it into our culture, when you bring it into a regulated environment, when you bring it into Los Angeles or the North America, how do you do that? Like, because things have to be twisted in a certain way and delivered in a certain way to actually be able to survive. You have to monetize things and be able to, hey, I wish that Legends, and I had this conversation with some makers that kind of had a holier than thou mentality about how Legends should be. And I'm like, well, you could call Marcus and negotiate a thing and throw your Legends, and I'll sit back. I'll fucking put my feet up and just invite me, and I'd love to check it out. But these are problems that are getting solved in figuring out how to mix, just like, Steep Hill, where you're taking scientists and you're pushing scientists up against a manufacturing deadline with results that have to go out. And you watch those two fucking rivers collide, and it's the most fucked up shit you've ever seen. Scientists are like, it's about science. And then the money guys are about, what the fuck do you mean it's about money? And, so it's this, I guess I have experience in these kind of fucking
the
things.
Logistics side of it, eh?
Oh, it's a nightmare, man. It was crazy shit. So Legends, figuring it out and putting it together in a way so that we could monetize it, because it has to be monetized. You're not, I'd love to go back and use Spain as an example. I'd love to use Amsterdam as an example, but Amsterdam was Marcus's bag. He was paying for it. Spain was Sean's bag. Flux, he paid for Spain. Who's paying for Cali now? Is that my bag?
I actually didn't know that. Did you guys know that? I thought it was actually not like that at all. So yeah,
this is an education.
Yeah,
it's a huge education for me right now.
It was a bag, like a major bag was going into throwing that fucking thing. And the reason why is because, just like our homies who own this company or that company that's a trap brand in Cali that flies out to Boston for 6 days and then comes back. They just did a drop and they banged the fuck out and they made money, right? So they're flying first class and they're eating that moo and their Instagram's lit, right? It's like that's what this was. These dudes smuggled in, they celebrated and they had a good fucking time. One dude paid the bag and he put that shit up. And if you bring something like that to Cali and LA and now you want to talk about it, you're talking about a $30,000 to $45,000 bag. So what do? You know, and all right, you want to bring in sponsors. Well, you can't just have any fucking sponsors. They can't be associated with any of the brands. They can't be, because then of course, you know, everyone wants to be like, oh, well, that's why so-and-so won because of blah, blah, blah. So like, you got to cover that. And there's so many fucking things that now you're monetizing it. So even the fact that you're just going to monetize it, some makers were like, you know, man, I was fucking hooded in a park in Istanbul and I fucking popped out and gave my sample to someone. And then like they want to talk about this, like there I was kind of experience in the hash world. And that's how they got into legends. And it's like, dude, everything evolves. You have a rec license now and you sell fucking hash to old ladies that come off of fucking cruise ships in Long Beach. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, shit's different. So you had to kind of figure out how the fuck do you do that? And luckily Kevin was there. You know, Kevin's stepped up. I got to make sure I shout out Kevin. He's, you know, just somebody who really fucking is able to do all the, you know, here's two of us and we're like, all right, we're going to do this. But then there's a bunch of things that neither one of us are good at. Every one of those things Kevin has become good at. So I got to give Kevin a ton of credit. He's fucking murdered it. And
did Marcus approach you, or was it like a discussion? You guys were like having a session
we
and being like, yo, let's bring it.
Yeah, we would just do like hash church and, you know, talk after hash church or do other stuff. And I think what it came down to was like, in order for Marcus to do it, he wanted to do it with someone that he knew was, you know, what did he say? It was like, you know, everyone wants to do it, but do you have the access to make it happen? Like, could you take it and actually then get the makers to trust you and get everyone to trust you and get the space? And could you really carry that and make that happen? And that was something not until afterward that I realized that I was like, oh shit, I guess we had the juice to actually pull it off, because we did. You know, we were able to get, you know, I thank every one of the makers that was involved, you know, because you got to think about it. It's just, to me, I know the culture. I know the makers. I know Marcus trusts me enough. So here I am in this position, in a great position, and here's an opportunity in my lap. So it was really important to make sure that we figured it out in a way that incorporated the public, because we want to open this up to a broader stage, that was okay with the makers, you know, because of course they're the ones that are putting up, you know, everyone pays to come to the dinner. That was the other thing, that it was like, all right, you mold this experience. What does it look like? Now, what is it worth? You put it up there, but then you're also going to certain sponsors, and like, you know, huge thanks to Mills, huge thanks to Octave and companies that were able to sponsor us, that were willing to, that were also fit the bill. Their customer was the guys that were there in a lot of ways. And then, you know, luckily for that time in my life when I fucking went on further in Dead Tour and became friends with Scott Deppy and was able to, you know, get Deppy. I called Deppy up and was like, hey, Legends Hash, and he's like, okay, like, yeah, I'm down. Like, and how do I sponsor it? And I'm just like, what the, you want to fucking, anything they sponsor blows up, right? Like,
can you break out the shit?
I was like,
break out the shit?
Yeah, people are asking for it. You need to bust
Can you break
out
out the shit, please?
To take it down?
No, not that one. Not that one.
The SFK.
The other one.
Yeah. No.
The other one.
I know what the one you're talking about. Yeah. All right, hold on. I'll get it.
Yes.
what, the beaker?
Yeah.
We're getting it, boys. We're getting it. We're getting it, boys.
Yo, that's unreal. Like, there's very few people, I think, that can just call up Scott Depp and be like, yo, what's good? And then him being like, yo, can I bring like a whole fucking custom set to sell and to sponsor with?
Wow.
Like,
dude, yeah, you go from
we
like
dream of that shit.
Well, you go from just like being, you know, we're friends, and I just offered him, like, I really want you to come to this dinner. You know, you got to come down here with us and enjoy this dinner. And he's like, yeah, he's like, for sure. Can I sponsor? Like, how do I sponsor this thing? Like right away, which to me was, you know, that's like the nod that you're looking for to, like, because then when you do associate Mothership with it, it just gets that credibility. But it also, at the same time, what's odd about it that I recognize afterward is that Deppy kind of carries this whole comet tale of his own. with like everything that comes with Deppy. So there's some people that were there that were just there to see Deppy, I think. So
The Comet Tail is putting it nicely. It's more like a planet. He's a solar system.
oh, he is a fucking
I was gonna say a cult.
he's a solar he's like a planet with a ponytail. Just fucking pulling everything in his direction.
For real.
But yeah, so here it is. That's the camera right there.
This thing is nuts.
Jeez.
So it's a little prototype beaker, a little 4-seed. And it's
There's a 4-seed on that stem?
Yeah, so you can kind of see him in there.
And that's a fixie, right? Like it's fixed?
No. It's a 10 mil.
No, but like the stem doesn't come out.
Yeah,
No,
it's a
the stem
fixed
doesn't
stem.
come out. It's attached at the base.
Oh, that's so sick.
tacky.
But it has
That's
2
tacky.
seeds on each side and up on top of each other on each side of it inside there. So,
Oh, that's dynamite.
but yeah, it's a little, you can see him inside, but it's a little super shredder, great little rig, like nice for like this nail, especially just like a nice little melt nail. So this is, it's a Sunday melt rig.
That's yeah.
super hype. That is gorgeous. I've been admiring
Deppy,
that one.
That's a
got-
dream piece right there.
Oh man, I've right when I got it, it's a prototype, so it's I'm not even sure if they're going to go in production with them. I think that's where they decided. They had, what's cool is we got to see all the prototypes from that, and you could tell the difference in size and shape and like what he was thinking. He wanted to just be like, all right, what direction am I going to go in? So he made these. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 of them, and this one was like one of the smallest ones, the only one with the 10 mil. Then there was a larger one with a bigger base that was 14, and then there's just different lengths and sizes. I think Maz, if you go on to Made's page, there's one of them still available from the drop. So we grabbed like the 4. Deppy sent me a video when he was showing us all the rigs, and he's so rough with the glass on the table, right? And then one of the rigs came when Chris bought it, and it's like it was cracked on the base from Deppy, like just like oh, hey, whatever, like
When you talked to us about when you first met Deppy, was it on a dead tour or oh
yeah, that's the one. That's the one that's not broken. Yeah, I met Deppy. So Deppy has a really good friend, or Deppy and myself have a really good friend named Island Al, who's named Al, who used to manage Deppy's shop for a long time. So Island, myself, Island and Scott, myself, and my buddy Custy Dave, we were all on tour together and all knew each other from tour. So we would just kind of, when you're on tour, you have like your crew and your friends, and you might have 2 buddies that have a vehicle, you have a vehicle, your other friends have a van or something, and you kind of, caravan in certain ways with together. So I knew those guys from that. And just knew him from that stuff. And it's a really funny story. Like I always stayed in touch with Al, but just didn't really, I knew Al did a lot of stuff in glass. I just wasn't sure. I knew he was up in Washington, Oregon area, like Pacific Northwest. But I had no idea that Mothership was owned by Deppy. Like I didn't know that. I knew Deppy's name, but I didn't know Scott from Dead Further Tour was Deppy. I didn't know him as that. I knew him as Scott, and he had hair. And he was a fucking totally different dude. And he was kind of aggro a little bit, like a crazy dude. And yeah, so I didn't really know that it was the same person. So I got into glass and got into dabs and all that shit early on through the lab, and met a lot of makers, and just, got pulled into that scene with a bunch of different people I knew, and knew who Mothership was and knew of Mothership pieces, and got into Mothership, but didn't realize that was Deppy. So randomly one day, Al hits me up, and he's like, "Oh, dude, I saw you got a ship. That's sick. When did you hit up Deppy?" And I'm like, and he says it a couple times, and I'm like, "Who the fuck are you talking about, dude?" Like, and he's like, "Where'd you get your pipe?" And I'm like, I got it from some third party or something like that. And he's like, "Well, that's Scott. Like, Scott owns that. That's Deppy." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then next thing I know, he like lines me up with the shop, and I bought like an egg and a couple things. And then when I bought it, that was when right when I bought it, I bought it and I went up there and picked it up. And when I did, I saw Scott, and he's like, "Dude, what's up?" And I was like, "Motherfucker." So yeah, so we've known each other. We weren't like best fucking friends or anything, but now we're good friends, like just from having.
You knew the leader.
Yeah, it was, it was a kind of a funny story because a small scene. And there's still a bunch of heads around from it, like Chem Dog and a bunch of cats that are all from that same scene, that like friends that we had from Lot, from Tor, and just kind of then knew of each other. But then as cannabis evolved in different states, we were still in that counterculture space and sort of reintroduced. And it's like, I look around now and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, okay, like Brian from IC Collect, just you see all these different dudes doing stuff that are from back in the day that are legit, like Craig from Satori, who owns his big thing, and and Brian from fucking Vital and Shiloh, and like, it's all old heads that really do know it, Jigga and Flux, and and those guys that all know each other from this industry for a long, long time, like all came up together and worked together for a long time. So
what was the first piece of glass you remember acquiring?
So Justin Benson from NorCal Cannabis, who owns Panacea, he invited me to some fucking weird concert one weekend, and we got there, and he had a Mobius, a crazy ass Mobius, and he had a fucking swing set up and all this crazy shit on it, and we just went to his hotel before and just ripped dabs and got super lit. And then I think like the next week he fucking bought me one as a gift, and I was like, yeah, and I just like, titanium nail, and then just kind of started there. But it was a Mobius Matrix. I still have it. It's was my first rig. So
that's fucking awesome, man. So was glass like a big part of your life continuously? Are you a constant collector, or how, like?
Yeah, I mean, I got into it through and just became friends with a lot of cats. Like that's how I got Tyrone. My dog was from Bertoni, and he's like a glass guy with Bertoni glass and his whole side. And then Coil has one of the dogs, and that's how I met Dan, was through that. And just the two intertwine. Like I've always tripped out and I've always wanted to kind of outline and showcase more in conversation how one birthed the other, because at the time it was a swing, and it was HMK made the swing, and it was glass was no one was really fucking dabbing, and it was like oil just kind of came out, and that HMK, the swing came into it, and once that was there, it was like, okay, now we can burn the oil. Well, then everyone was like, now think of what that did though, because everyone was trapping flour. That was really what was happening. So the UPS boys and the box ship boys, you went from having to ship 20 fucking units, 30 units, 50 packs to make money, down to $3.98 fucking United States Postal Service pack, where I just made the same amount of money because I could put a half pound of oil in that. Or even crazier, dude, we were just fucking running. Like when I had the gas station, which was one of the BHO companies we had 41 Wax, which was like a take on Lizzie Borden with like two axes crossed into each other. We had these BHO companies, and we would just fucking take dude, I'm talking slabs into a Pelican backpack where the computer went, and just close it up and slide it right through. And they would be like, yeah, have a good day. And you'd fly out with fucking 6 pounds of oil and turn, like, dude, in Amsterdam, if the guys that were going crazy, for those cannabis cups that had oil first hit them like shatter, you'd pay $9,000 for a pound in the US, and you take it to Amsterdam and get 27,000 euros. So that's where those bags came from. That's where like, oh, let's throw a hash party, like fucking, that's kind of that was the math there. The hardest thing was getting your cash out of Europe, like figuring out how you're gonna get your shit back. So that's why some people still have businesses in Europe to this day. Started a brand off of one cup or something, but that's the reality of like what that world was and what people were doing. And it's way past those days. And I'm not saying everybody was involved. I mean, I know Marcus was really smart, because Marcus had his booth, and Marcus did bubble bags, and Marcus was making money selling legitimate products. And that was kind of, a lot of guys looked up to that, because it was like, oh fuck, man, here's these dudes are doing it. Like they can legitimately rest their head on a pillow and sleep at night. And like Marcus has done, being a part of Whistler Tech, being a part of his company now that he has, the hash company.
Yeah, shout out Embark.
Oh, dude, crazy, just and they're such fucking nerds that love what they do. Like, they love hash so much, and fall in love with it. And it's like hash has that power to kind of make. I love how hash is, it's not fucking around. Like it could look so good and smell so good and bring you to this great place, but like if you don't get your shit done, you know what's going to happen, and you're just going to, you know, and you could, it's a nasty mistress, you know, it's at the same time, because we all know it. And I love that about it. It's a very, very sharp razor blade that in order to, you see some people who are living like very happy hash life, and you're like, how the fuck is that person doing that? And it's like, it's a balance, man. It's a major fucking balance to pull that off. I give props to anybody that does it, because I know the challenge of it. You know, and like I started waking up at like 5 a.m. because I was like, there are not enough fucking hours in the day to smoke hash. Like, there's just
100%.
I'm like, if I have to, you know, for my ADHD, if I have to
wake up early to smoke hash all day.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, Wookerson, man, like that's the truth. But it really is like, I did that for a year because I would always be amazed by people who could wake up and work out in the morning. Because I'd be like, who the fuck is this dude? And then like Jocko Willnick or some shit, you know? And then I did it for a year and just got up but didn't do anything. I would just get up early and be like, all right. And the way I saw it in my head was, oh man, I'm much more calm because I have time to waste. And I can just get high and chill and see what happens in the morning and get into this cycle. And then after doing it for a year, I was like, all right, now I'm going to work out in the morning. Now I'm okay. Now I see too much space and time in the morning. And like, that's the kind of shit that I'll do. It's like, you know, something different a lot of times in a row.
So hold on, let's go back to that, because you posted a question the other day on Instagram about dabbing and working out, or smoking and working out. And then I messaged you. I was like, I literally just took like a big dab of this Fruit Joy. Yeah. And like, I like those fruity terps. I don't want like a gassy hit before I go and work out. Otherwise my lungs are crippled. Yeah. But I was like, yeah, I'm taking a dab right now, and I'm going to do a 5K, and like, I'll go and do a 5 or 10K. And for me, it's like, it gets my head in the space where like, I'm not thinking about how much my muscles are hurting. I'm just thinking about, you know, whatever, I'm having fun. I'm in my own headspace, right? Like, so where are you for that? Because you didn't answer the question on it. You just asked it.
For me, what it does is it turns me into a worker. You know, I can get lit, you know, I can wake up with all the thoughts in the world, and I make my list, and I'm like, hey, woo, and I do my thing. But then when it's time to do some work, when it's time to like sweat or get crazy, whether it's actually working out or taking the dogs on a walk, for me, it's like, take a big ass fucking dab, you know, like a 0.5, you know, a 0.25, and really just like clean out all the cobwebs, get all, you know, brand new. We're high as fuck right now, and get there. And then as I'm coming off of that, for some reason, as I start to come down from there, that's like when all the magic happens for me. That's when I'm able to like find my lane, get into my lane, blah, 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 and I'm a worker. That's the best way to say it, is that like whatever I did on that list earlier and made for me to do, now that I'm high, that's what I'm doing. It's like 1 through whatever, here we go. I'm like, and I just hammer the fuck through. And I've learned cool things like Pomodoro method, you know, using like, so you can like get really baked, and then you have different size. So this one's 30 minutes, and it's the sand, you know, the sand blasts through it for 30 minutes. So if you're getting into a task, you flip that. And then what the habit is that you get into what you're doing. It helps you initiate into things, and it gives you a physical understanding. But what you do is you flip it, and then you get into what you're doing, and then before you know it, it's empty already. So you'll flip it again and keep doing what you're doing, and you're doing these 30-minute lots of it. And then when you kind of get sick of it, or you're starting to distract yourself, you have another one that's a 5-minute one, and then you take that one and you set that one, and now you can fuck off for 5 minutes or take a piss or whatever. And you keep using these to kind of, you know, because it's like a guide, you know, it's like a little canary in the mines in a sense. But it gives you, so it's called Pomodoro method, which works really well. And you can get them on like Amazon. But yeah, that's, you know, little shit for like ADHD, or like, you know, another cool thing is like OKRs. So outcomes and key results, which are, you know, methods. And this is going to probably sound weird to a lot of stoners, but, you know, when I was talking about the balance of like smoking a lot of hash, but then also remaining productive, you can use Scrum techniques and other like computer programming, methods that they use for their projects, for project management, to stay on task while you're really, really baked. And it's, you know, it works. If you have ADHD and shit like that, you can use that stuff. So we do that stuff at 800, like get back to the company and talk about it a bit. it's really a cannabis think tank. It's like a cannabis cadre of guys that have a lot of experience in cannabis space, whether it's, you know, from Justin Lee with 710 Labs, or Alex from, you know, Poofer from Resin, or Taylor from T Beazle, or, you know, or Marcus, and there's just, it's a really cool portal for business and other things that we have access to. That's kind of our friendships and partnerships and all of our buddies that we work with, and they're all experts and they know their shit really well. We kind of built a company around access, and it's, you know, we have access to all these people because we have this Rolodex of friends that we, you know, we can literally reach out to the CEOs of most companies that are worth their weight and get lunch the next day, or be on their schedule immediately. You know, we know them so well because we work with them for so long. Or there's people that are doing great things that we don't know, that have respect for what we've done, you know, whether it's Steep Hill, or, you know, what we're doing at Pipeline, or what we're doing with Legends. And for us, like, we're not fucking brilliant in any way. Like, we're hash guys. You know, Kevin and I are both guys that love fucking hash, and, you know, we get baked and get distracted sometimes, and we fall down a hole, and then we're like, oh my God, you know, but we love hash. It's like, it's really what's most important to us because it motivates the shit out of us. It gives us that energy, and we love it. And again, I think it's not as much as loving hash, but like beauty. Like, it's such a beautiful fucking thing, in and out, in every way, in different formats, and the way that it makes you feel is amazing. And you couple music with that, and you couple great food with that, and you couple your stupid friends with that, and and it just sprinkle a little hash on it all, and it makes it all so much fucking better. And it's like, it's a path. And you could, it's a wide, broad, amazing path that you can really get completely and utterly fucking wrapped into on every level. And that's kind of what we've done with 800. From, you know, we look at it as like nose to tail. If hash was nose to tail, how the fuck do we get involved on all of it? And it's like, all right, well, Pipeline, we include breeders, manufacturers, producers, you know, everybody's involved, and the consumer and the customer at the end. We include everyone there. And then Legends of Hash, we're like hyper focused on the culture and bringing that stuff to the US, and putting together, and also, you know, 800 Pounds Mantra is a management consulting company. So it started with us managing and consulting Marcus on the Legends brand. And then it turned into Marcus and myself, you know, owning the rights to Legends in the US, through a partnership. Now we have an LLC, which is, you know, Legends Events LLC, and we will be doing more Legends events and putting it together based on just like you know, when it really happened, I called Marcus and we were talking, and I said, look, how about this? If you want to launch a brand in California, 800 will launch your brands with you. And in return, you know, let's do Legends together, and we'll do it completely transparent, share all the books, share everything with you. And we'll do it together and see how it turns out. Our aim is not to profit. Our aim is to cover the costs and see what happens, and allow it to kind of, you know, be itself. And he was like, let's do it. You know, so Kevin and I put in like, I'd say, you know, 115 hours a week each for, you know, 6 months or something crazy, 5 months, and got the thing done and got it put together. And then at the end, we kept our word, and you know, everyone that came enjoyed it. The people that we work with enjoyed it. We built a great partnership with some other event organizers that we really like, and now it's like it has legs and we can do it. And we're talking about NorCal, and we're talking about, you know, for a new concept, you know, to really broaden the concept, to go just from a dinner. Like, how do you make it from just a dinner the way that it was, and how do you make it better? Like, how do you, you know, if your eyes are open and you're not a jealous bastard, you're looking at Ego Clash, and you're looking at Masters of Rosin, and you're looking at these other events, and you're talking to the makers and seeing how their experience was, and you're trying to perfect it. And like, after Ego Clash, the day after Ego Clash, I jumped on the call to Brandon and was like, dude, kudos, like, fucking amazing event. Like, everyone I talked to was super stoked. And I told him, I'm like, you know, I'm picking everyone's brain because I want to, you know, put on the perfect event. And the events are so different from one another too. If you look at it, Ego Clash is an opportunity for makers to go and really judge and get together. And it's not as like a dinner. Like, Legends is a dinner that's very, you know, very good food, and it's all about the environment and the atmosphere.
The vibe.
Yeah, and the vibe, and it's super different. And, you know, Brandon and I had a chuckle, and he's like, I hit him up and I'm like, hey, congrats and this and that. And he's like, oh, I love Brandon because he's so straightforward, but he's like, I was a little butthurt I didn't get invited. And I'm like, well, it's SoCal. Like when we do the NorCal one, you'll be invited, but like, you wanted me to drag your ass all the way to fucking SoCal in your diesel truck. And, you're the one person I thought I spared, so it's all on good terms, and like learning, just keep my eyes open and learn from those events. And that's what we're going to try to bring to Legends now, is to just up the ante a bit and bring it to that next level and add to it and sort of like bang it out a bit. And the same thing with Pyramid Pipeline, taking it and adding to it and, bringing more thought to it and perfecting it and making it so that it's makes way more sense for the makers, makes a ton more sense for the farmers. And then we get to kind of, steer and be a part of, what's happening in the hash world without being hash makers. And that's kind of the coolest thing about it too, is that I don't want to, for a while I thought, it would be cool to have a hash brand. And yeah, I'm associated with some, Diamond Baron and David and Rosin Baron and things like that, and Ultra Terpy Terp Club. And there's an association, but I'm at the place now, and we're at the place now where I think we're distancing ourselves from any specific brand and getting more into the supply chain and getting more into how do you make it so that you're giving better offering to the hash makers for products and supply chain. B, how do you enhance the experience for them when it comes to distributing and selling those products? And then B, how do you enhance the end result for the customer, for the person at the end? And then how do you dial out and make an even doper environment for everybody involved in hash, and kind of stay in that place and don't have to be, I'd rather have access to everything and work with everybody than sort of like be in one lane and not be able to do that, to enjoy myself. I love, smoking hash and having fun. And I want to do that as much as possible while we accomplish all this other shit and do these things. And if you make money, you can make really good money at the same time, and some of these models that we're looking at for Pipeline, the models that we look at for different things, they're profitable models, and it's just, there's 1,000 distros in California, and none of them are what we consider to be doing it in a very certain way. We're looking at it and we're like, this is hyper fractured, man. Like, it's like, this is weird. So we're kind of like trying to take what we understand and know and apply it in a way. And what's great about it is the more that we reveal and the more that we show people, and there's been months, 8 months of behind the scene work with like proof of concept and putting things together. And you guys will see, like, I'll post stuff online and talk about stuff, but I've learned to kind of keep things a little more quiet and kind of, not everyone's your friend. Like some of those people, some of the 28,000 followers on my page probably want to see me fail. So you got to kind of keep it a little more quiet, I've learned. And like, and then I also learned, like, I was this many days old when I learned that in order to manifest stuff, you can't talk too much about it, because the negative people that don't understand it are going to rally against it. So you have to kind of keep your shit to yourself. And I just learned that, which is kind of funny, because I've always felt like full transparency is the real path of honesty and like the best way to do shit. I'd rather be like, this is everything I'm doing, and if you can stop me, then I know I beat you. That was kind of like my mentality. Like this, like, younger brother, stupid fuck. Like my brothers when I was younger, my brothers were like, if someone says something that you don't like, just punch them in the face. And that was like the mantra as I grew up, and then realized and learned that, like, you can't just punch people in the face because you disagree with them. Like, they have a say before you punch them in the face. It's like, you have to learn to talk and figure shit out. So I'm lucky that I changed gears and kind of wanted to be, there was one point in my life where, like, the one thing that I wanted to be most was articulate. And I felt like if I was articulate, I could talk my way into or out of anything. And that's the place to be. Like, that's the good spot. So definitely.
Absolutely, bro. I wanted to ask you a bit about hash preferences and your thoughts on hash and rosin and your thoughts on the industry. And I want to start with fresh press versus cured. I want to know if you have a preference or if that's something that's cultivar specific to you. And then the follow-up to that question is, do you think that the fresh press will be as prevalent in the California market in 3 years, or more, less, or the same as it is today?
I think what it comes down to when I think about the question is more, it's a preference thing, and it's going to be, certain people have different levels of senses, right? So you'll meet some people that are super sensitive to smell, and they can really, express themselves incredibly well about what they're experiencing. And those people are pretty rare. But then there's people who they mimic everything they see, right? So you may see the loudest guy online being like, oh, fuck fresh press. But when you get into hash and you get into production and you get into scale and you start to understand, fresh press is really the longest shelf life product you can put out to the public. So if you're a lab and you're doing small batches and you're putting your stuff out fresh press and it's getting out to the public, that really has more to do with like shelf life in my mind, because post-processing from fresh press, if you think of it in a business standpoint, it takes time. Time is money. Now if you're a Brad and you're looking at yields, you're looking at these things and you're understanding operations. If you're CEO of a company, then you understand operations really well. Our community and our tastes don't really line up with operations. And I posted a while back that like culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that's true. Culture will always eat strategy for breakfast because culture speaks to market, where strategy has to catch culture and it has to catch to understand market. So with that in mind, and you think about that now, you're orchestrating production to the market and to the public. And when you do, it makes it a lot easier if you can just take fresh press and put it right out to the market. Because now I like that idea, because you're giving the control to the consumer. As long as everybody along the line preserves the product and you receive it, that's a learning point for the consumer. So some consumers are going to get fresh press. And if they're like some of us, they're like, oh, I take the fresh press and I put it on top of the router in my office and I leave it there while I sit at my desk. And then about lunchtime, I open it up and I have a fucking Arnold Palmer, which is fucking half one and half the other. And I whip that bitch up. And like when they do that, the fucking terps come to life. And like, as you get more educated, you learn that like, leave your fresh press on the desk for a little while, let it get to room temp, then you can smell it, right? Like if it's cold, you can't smell it. So my biggest issue I've always had with fresh press is that it's not there yet, kind of. It's like, all right, it's kind of like weed that's not fully cured, because this is a curing process, and the curing process is bringing things out. That oxidation is actually like causing oxidation, and agitation is going to open up and bloom the experience that you have and like let more of those terps out. That's why when you look at guys that do cold cure, they'll sit there and take the fresh press and let it sit, and then it converts, and then they take it from conversion and they'll show the two pictures. They'll show a picture of it like dry sitting in the jar with a nice terp layer on top from sitting there, and they'll take it, whip it, and then show the next wet picture of all the texture and all the moistures all through it. So it's post-process, like what do I prefer? Man, just based on grab and go, shredding terps, it's like it's cultivar specific sometimes. Like it depends, like for some reason the guavas and shit and any of the GMOs, I like those in fresh press because they're so strong. There's so much there to experience that you can kind of, okay, I'm on this end of the spectrum. I'm going to pull it in this direction and kind of see where, there are other things like, fuck, man, like you just look at different strains and like a really good, great pie that's whipped, that's just, anything from Heady Waters, that's like so perfectly done in wet tech, that's fucking mind-blowing, garlic juice or different things like that. Like it just depends. It's, I'm not one of those people who believes that that in every different strain there's a different high. Like I don't believe that shit. I think it's just there's a battery in there, and this is how long that battery is going to have power more is what I kind of see it as. So like, that's why I like to take a 0.25 dab or a 0.5 dab, because I'm always in the same place. I'm fucking lit. Like we're there. There's no other question about it. And I can get more lit, like even, okay, let's do the other half of that gram and get even more lit. And like, I think like to me, a good dab is recorded in reaction of the dab. It's like, you get done with the dab and like you have
you mean death or not death?
You want the single tier. That's what
it's like being in a guillotine and escaping it. It's like this fucking experience,
What about the drool? Do you get the drool?
All that shit. Like, all right, so for me, it's kind of evolved. COVID had a weird reaction. Like I had a weird reaction from COVID where after I got COVID, and I had the fucking vaccine, I had the booster, and I still got fucking COVID, right? So I get COVID, and I watched, Phone Homie came here and we dabbed before he got COVID, and like it was a really weird fucking thing to watch and kind of see, what happened to him, and I was just like, oh shit, this is kind of crazy. So I got COVID, and afterward, before COVID, I could take any size dab and never cough, like ever. It was just like it was like yoga. It was so easy. And now, after COVID, there is a threshold where like it'll make me cough now. And I'm like, motherfucker, and I would really have to push it before. And I think it's just going to take time till I can get back to like that level of comfort where I'm, I can take like monster, dragon, ripping dabs. But those size dabs are what I like. I like that like hyper fucking confusion audio. Like you're sitting there with people and you're just having audio hallucinations. You don't see a fucking word. You're like, we're going to tap out for a few. I like that place. Like I like being there because I know it's not going to get worse than that. It's not like
super uncomfortably high.
What's that?
Like just uncomfortably high and then mellowing back out into like the comfort.
Yeah, like edible on an international flight. Like fucking, like, excuse me, sir. Yeah.
Are you okay?
I've had fun times on the plane. But
I wanna ask you about your thoughts on mixing, resin mixing or blending, like pre and post washes. What are your thoughts? Like, do you see it becoming more prevalent in the industry? Do you support it? What do you think about it?
I love it. I think it's, where you're looking at now, you're taking ingredients and you're allowing a chef to create an offering. You're allowing, what is it? It's a mixture of compounds and actives in a way that's going to then deliver to the palate, and the person's going to experience it. And depending on how acute they are and understand it, and their how much, what their palate IQ is, I guess you would call it, you'd see how well they enjoy it or what they think of that blend. So I think one of my favorites is a couple guys, but one that comes to mind would be, one of my favorites is Swollen Heads, Tito, with how he does it. He's sitting there and cultivating stuff, and Jay from Professor Sift, and some of these guys, and Flynn from Wick Sauce Winery is a little, not so much in that direction, more purist, but some, like, it gets so deep into what they can do. Some of them, like I have some melt from Real Cannabis Chris that won't grease, and I'm like, how the fuck, and it's just however he made it, like and then I have stuff from different people that just kind of brings that like real, brings the fucking heat. Like there's guys now that are blending, there's always going to be purists. There's always guys who are going to be like, oh, if you should create a category in Legends for blending. And it's like, you should go fuck yourself. Like you should not say things like that. Like you should honestly like not tell people what they should do when it comes to bigger picture things like that, especially what is it doing? It's challenging you. What is it doing? Is it making you feel uncomfortable? Well, good. That's a good fucking thing. Like, good. I'm glad you're uncomfortable. What comes out of that? Like, and then again, if you did a blend, that's the guy who I say, like, well, if you did a blend, what would you do? If you were going to do it, what would you do? Because maybe it opens the door for them into this weird, uncomfortable
I'd rather die than do a blend.
Yeah, it's like, I'd rather fuck that, man. Like, and you're like, well, what's a cross? Isn't that a blend on the fucking genetic side? And then you have to roll the dice and like, never mind. Once again, talk about a Brad. Take a Brad and put him in the picture. What's a blend to Brad? Honestly, what blends are to me is they're two fucking 1.8s getting together and making a fucking viable yield so that you can have something to dab. Because we're not talking about BHO. We're not talking about every single strain has a representation, has value and representation. We're talking about like archaeology, and this site where these dinosaurs were, there's only half a brontosaurus, asshole. And over here, there's a fucking quarter of a pterodactyl. So now we got a pterodactylsaurus if we fucking put them together, right? Like, you're not going to not open the fucking the museum because you have the ass end of a brontosaurus and the front end of a pterodactyl. No, you're going to put it together. you're going to stretch it on out there in front of the people and you're going to fucking show them. And like, it's the same thing with this, because some people prefer a pterodactyl. Some people prefer a brontosaurus. And like, unless you're, you know, I always like the archaeology reference when it comes to hash, because that's what this is. It's like you're taking it and separating it and then putting it in the purest form. And it's even funnier. It's like, it's in its purest form now, but if you do something wrong, you're going to fuck it up. So it's in its purest form. Now let's figure, you know, and it's like, there's all this time and all this shit included in rules that continue in how you're going to get to continue to see this in its form. And environment changes its form, just like us. And it's like, oh, there's a time limit on how long I can let this sit here or it's going to fucking change. Yeah, there is. Like, do you know there's people that don't understand that dried cannabis? Like, there's some people that don't capture and understand the principle of the fact that if I take cannabis and I dry it and I collect the trim and I make hash out of that, same process, using mechanical separation. Or if I take wet material and I separate that there's different sizes to the heads and why. They don't understand. They're like, well, how come? And you're like, it's fucking dry. And dry weed.
Grapes and raisins.
Yeah, dude. You're like, what the fuck do you mean? You don't
Even
understand.
like fucking meat with jerky.
Exactly.
That shit shrinks up.
Fruit with sugar. Like, you know, when you remove moisture from fruit, it dehydrates it and it gives it a high sugar value, but now you have also fiber that's with it. You know, it returns the value because now you have fiber with sugar. But people don't understand that it's like, it's just in another format. So, you know, when people ask me sometimes, they're like, oh, what's your favorite hash? I'm like, I'm the guy that's like, if it's separated from a cannabis plant and that's where it came from, it's hash, as far as I'm concerned. That's what hash is. It's a concentration of what's collected from the plant, then reintroduced, right? Now there's hash that's been post-processed to CRC. There's, you know, a million different ways to do this, but what's your preference and what do you like? And hash is way better than politics because there's more choices. Politics, you're like, you're either a donkey or a fucking whatever, you know? Like hash, you could be like, oh, I like this. I like that. You know, I like all these different things. There's so much room in there. And it's
fire is fire.
Yeah. It's like, it's such a great guide. Like, you know, and dude, I've gotten into circles of people that are like the dude in their area. And it's like, everyone's like, you got to fucking smoke some hash with the dude. And you're like, okay. And you sit down and I'll sometimes sit with that dude and smoke. And we have completely fucking different taste because we have completely different access to the hash that's in front of us from completely different people. And like, I don't ever try to compare, you know, people sometimes will be like, dude, your fucking stash. Like I have a lunchbox that's my stash because it's like you're seeing so many hash makers all the time, and you're like, this is what I do for a living. I work in the space of curating material for makers and all these things. So you're gonna have a lot of paintings if that's what you do. You know, you're gonna have a lot of examples of it. So but to me, it's more like any person I run into, I'm like, oh, you got to try this hash. Like, dig in because I want to see what they think and get their experience because mine's so jaded. That it's ridiculous. It's like, you know, we're getting to see things that aren't even fucking out yet, and then you know, having 710 send you like ambassador fucking things like that shit's ridiculous. It's not every person is getting that same experience. So I'm just super grateful for it. Like I still to this day will sit there and take a dab and be like, fuck yeah. I still get giddy and like super excited about it. And that's what's rad is that it's like, you know. But the other half of all this, like what I posted the other day, is health. And that's what, you know, I always try to tell people that it's like your health is really important, man. Like the whole burner situation should be a huge eye opener to a lot of people that you could be burner and you could be that successful and you could have Wiz Khalifa at your birthday and all these fucking cool things. But you're not going to be there for next year's birthday if you don't pay attention to your health. You could have all the money in the world and you're probably there's a system that they built to take all your fucking money to get your health back. It works really well. And it's an interesting system. And you know, what is the saying? It's like, you know, you can pay for organic food now, or you can pay for fucking healthcare later, you know? And it's the same thing with like, I look at it as like, you can pay attention to your health now instead of paying your fucking healthcare company later. You know, you can, like, I'm starting a thing right now where I'm taking cold showers in the morning. I don't want to fucking do that. That shit is trash,
Yeah,
bro.
that's a life hack.
That is the fucking
that's my life
trash of. That is the most uncomfortable, like non-intuitive fucking thing you could possibly ever fucking do. And then do this too. Think about the fact that, like, if you really get into it, then you're gonna spend money every day to freeze your dick hole off first thing in the morning. Like, but that the, you know, the cold shock values of that and the other things that you get from it, or gut health. You know, for me, it was like the light turned on when I realized that, like, all the mitochondria in my body is built in my gut. And if I have shitty gut health, then every 7 years, all the cells in my body that are replacing themselves, that cycle, there's an error in that cycle every time. Every 7 fucking years, I've got shitty mitochondrial, you know, inputs in every cell that I have in my body. And, you know, I'm not in line with the sun because of an addiction to the fucking phone or whatever. It's like, you know, you gotta, you know, and I'm not the guy that, like, wakes up and fucking doesn't touch the phone. Like, no, I wake up and grab my phone and I look at shit. I want to be informed. And then I might go meditate or do something else. And, you know, but it's like, not everything's going to work, but give it some effort. At least, like, pay attention to light intake, pay attention to all these things, you know, pay attention to all these different things, because you're not going to, you know, you're curating this great life for yourself, just like your hash collection. And you're also curating your health. Like, if you don't pay attention, how are you going to get to enjoy it? You know, like, how are you going to get to benefit from a Bitcoin investment? You won't be alive in 5 fucking years. How are you going to get to, you know, watch anything change? How are you going to get to, like, get into the industry and get that job and be that dude, if that's what you're looking to do? You know, you're not going to get it sipping lean. You're not going to get it fucking, you know, being stupid with the firearm. You're not going to get it ripping people off. You're not going to get it doing that shit. If you want to impress people with who you are and have them talk about you and love you, you're going to do it by, like, doing rad shit. And, like, you know, and that's why I'm always so down to, like, inspire people, because it's, you know, it takes inspiration from every level. Like, it's to do rad shit. Like, it takes inspiration. It takes people catching someone off guard and, like, making their day and stoking them out. And it's, you know, that stuff is what matters too, because that's the fuel that kind of gets people over that point where it's there, you know, where they're, like, afraid of something, or they look on social media and think the person that they're looking at is, like, this invincible soul that doesn't shit themselves every once in a while. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Like, we all fucking shit ourselves every once in a while, you know, hopefully less than others, but, you know, if it's a big dab, maybe you shit yourself.
So,
but that's you know, that's why that inspirational message I try to always, that's for me. Like, that's, I don't know if people realize that, but that shit's to, like, motivate me.
Yeah.
And I'm just, like, coming up with that thing and sharing it and being like, oh, does this bring value to someone else? It's like, and that's honestly what it is. It's, you know, it's like, it's a lot, it's podcasts and that shit, and, like, ask yourself a question and not be so afraid of or bothered by, like, the 19-year-old that writes cringe on your post that inspires fucking 60 people. You know, you look at it, you look at their page, you're like, oh, I'm fucking 60. Oh, you drink lean. And I'm like, oh, well, block and delete the message, you know, or something. And it's like, you can let it all in, but when you let it all in, you're going to be the filter of that shit. So,
100%.
you know, don't let as much of it in. And I mean, let in good hash, like, let that in and see where that leads you. If it motivates you, awesome. If it confuses you and causes problems, then you need to tighten some shit up, because it's a superpower that you can gain by tightening shit up and managing that sort of love for hash that will I've seen it take people out of the fucking stratosphere. Like, I've seen friends of mine change zip codes because of hash. I've seen people turn their entire life around and become more aware and more understanding of a love for the plant and a love for hash. So, you know, I've never seen other things do that, which is, you know, why I think it's safe to kind of stay in this lane and shred terps and fucking just have fun, you know.
Man, I couldn't agree more. So, as somebody who sees a ton of different resin and rosin from a ton of different makers, both using commercial units and utilizing paddles, do you feel that there is a ceiling that commercial solventless extraction units have as far as quality goes when compared to a paddle? Or do you feel Yeah, just that's my question.
Yeah, I think there is. I don't think we've hit it yet. I think it's because what you got to understand is if you hit it and then the production value of the input raises, then you go past it, right?
Yeah.
So if the inputs are greater, and again, we're talking about mechanical separation. So the lack of contaminant and the lack of contaminant along with the abundance of quality inputs is going to make better hash, especially, it's all about what catches up to what at what time, right? And if production gets better, say a thing like pipeline, what pipeline allows is for breeders to really be able to present genetics that get to the market more quickly. If they get to the market more quickly, they push through the fog and get to the end consumer more quickly is what that means. The end consumer's input or response to that is what's going to popularize and direct the rest of the industry, because that's what a market does. So, it's the more the merrier, but I don't think it's reached that point yet. I've seen, there's guys doing, like, look at Heritage, look at ET and some of the new production there. Look at these, 200 compared to a 150 or something. Like, just look at how good the product is. But you can also ask that maker at the same time, when they wipe that first spoon in there, or when they're looking in the glass and seeing what's collecting, it's always the same thing. It's like, in their heart, they're like, I hope this fucking material is good enough. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, that's what they're thinking. And then if you come back from that moment in time, before that, they were literally looking at the material being like, but before that, in that moment of time before then, they knew the farmer and they looked at the plan on the thing and I fucking hope this thing. And before that, a week before, they did a jar tech test and they were like, oh, look at all that milk. Okay. And so it has to be, can you sit there and say that this winter, this gram, right, that you have in your hand was the perfect farmer, the perfect cultivar, the perfect setting in the laboratory, and the perfect yield and outcome with the perfect packaging environment into the perfect storage situation, which then presented in front of you as the best fucking hash you've ever tried in your life? Like, sure, but we're not there yet. Like, there's so many things that can be perfected to get there. Like, I think the best dab I ever take will be the dab I take before I die, right? Like, that's the best dab. Like, the last one I took's the best one, because it took you to the portal of fucking hash, man. Like, it brought you to, you took it in. So I think we're not there yet. I think we're getting closer and closer. And I think that as we creep close enough to the point where we're scaling too much to produce quality material, it's going to keep rising, because the quality of the material is going to rise, the quality of what's coming in. Like, just, this is the first year of pipeline. This is the first time there's ever been a conduit built to really weed things out and bring things to the forefront more quickly, so we can get a faster response and understanding of what is quality and what's there. And, like, I mean, can someone say that they've ever curated 46 strains of solventless producing strains that are above 4% from 6 or 7 different breeders? Like, I don't know if anyone's really, like, they don't have the space to do that or the capacity. So now that you're doing it the first time, and then you're planning and coordinating with very successful business people and companies to bring this to the culture consistently, that now you're really going to fucking, now 10 turns into 11. You're like, oh, fuck, it's, if there's going to be a fucking 7-star, it's going to come out of some of this shit. It's going to come out of, like, I always ask, I'm always like, well, what's the next GMO? Yeah. And why is GMO the way it is? And most people are like, oh, well, GMO is, they want to talk about Michigan and they want to talk about cookies. And you're like, no, why is GMO the way it is? It's because of that cuticle size, that big ass fucking head in there that you can breed with, that's dominant as shit, that transfers into whatever you make, whatever you're going to create from the progenitor. And the same thing with banana strains, and the same thing with fucking these other ones. You're fucking around. All you're doing is, like, and this is what I tell everybody. Me and Marcus joke about this. Everyone, you can take every fucking maker, every fucking breeder, every fucking guy you got, all of them, and none of them can hold a fucking candle to Sam the Skunk Man. You're not going to touch the knowledge, of understanding of breeding, for outcomes, breeding. You want to breed for this or bag appeal or whatever, like that's cool, but breed for hash production, solventless specific, using old world methods, not the icon or this, right? Like that's the craziest shit ever. Like the info in that dude's head, which, you know, I'm super stoked to be working with Marcus to be able to get some of that stuff out of Sam's head and out of Marcus's head and into the general public. Why? Because it's going to push this shit even further. And maybe that last dab that I take really is the best dab I ever fucking take, you know, like, and that's
if you can help us get in touch with them, we'd love to have them on the show to spread that knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Sam, I don't think Sam's ever going to do like a interview like this.
Never gonna happen.
I'll call.
Like when he's on Hash Church, he does like he has a Dr. Seuss stuffed animal that sits there, and the camera's just on the stuffed animal.
Yeah,
That's
shout
cool.
out, Mark.
I appreciate that. That would be legit.
Yeah, no, we're talking. You know, it's cool, man. Like we're talking right now with Marcus about the concept of Hash Church, about the concept of NFTs, and using the NFT as an access point into that whole world, where if you purchase a certain NFT, you would have access to different hash churches, or access to Marcus, or access to an actual hash church with, you know, to get. There are makers who would love to have a piece of history in the form of a photo or a picture, which is an NFT, but then the contract that connects that's connected to that would give a ton of access for somebody. And in our world, when we talk about it, I mean, what maker wouldn't want to have a 45-minute to an hour opportunity to talk with Marcus and Sam together in a private, you know, and do that once every, every other quarter, because now the value of that, once that maker's had it and he's used it and gotten that value, there's other makers that want to buy that from him and buy that access. And that's kind of, you know, that idea, and a lot of stuff that Gary Vee's doing for his conventions and the access. We just look at that stuff and we skew it a bit differently for cannabis, for what we're doing, you know, and then look at NFTs for access to, look at Grandiflora and a brand. You know, if every eighth that you bought from Grandiflora, or every product that they sold, had an NFT that authenticated that purchase, then it would give you access now, because NFTs are really about community. That's what people don't realize. Like an NFT is like the old splash page, but instead of just a place you go, now there's some instruction there. There's a contract. There's access points into other things based on its value. So when you start to incorporate that into stuff, like, could you imagine buying a piece of art and then it's a ticket to a sesh that you can always go to no matter what, and you just show it on your phone and you have your ticket, and there's like a VIP section, and all the guys that own that one get to go to this place, and that's really where NFTs are kind of going. So or even look at access to Marcus's educational platform, you know, for his stuff. And so we're kind of, you know, Legends is we're going to be soon releasing this Legends is the first Legends that ever had a professional photographer take photos of every one of the entries. So we did multi-layer photos of all the entries with Zoom Garden. Our homie came out, Nick, and did all the photos for us. And we have really cool stuff we're about to come out with that will create a much bigger community around hash and allow people to kind of, you know, all of the heads that are in hash will now be able to create a wallet, get involved, have access to other things, because a lot of the art around us, you know, a lot of the guys from Elbow and the glass community as well are going in that direction to make it where you purchase these NFTs, you'll have access to this. And, you know, heaters at some point may be that you have to purchase beforehand, you have to purchase an NFT, and that's your ticket into heaters, or that's your ticket into champs, or that's your ticket into the next chalice or something. And, you know, that's kind of where all this is going. But what it does away with is this fake Instagram shit. Now someone can't, you know, pretend that they're you, because we authenticate everything. We get to the point now where even my post, you know, I could put a post up, and in the post there could be a QR code, and you have to screen the QR code, and then it takes you to my actual offering, what the fuck I'm actually trying to talk to you about. Where if my competitor or someone else, when you get to end point, you can look at the URL and be like, this isn't the fucking real one. So here we go. Now we can authenticate things and show in reality, like there's, a lot of guys that what gives people away when they're bullshitting is the false marketplace for purchase. If you think about it, because a lot of these companies have no marketplace for purchase, like no. And as soon as you see this fucking marketplace for purchase, you're like, wait a minute, like Grandiflora doesn't sell weed online. Like, what the fuck is this? It's people don't realize that, but that's going to help with a lot of these things. A lot of glass blowers, they're getting into that space, and there's conversations with some of the biggest guys right now. And so 800, Kevin's spearheading and putting together a really big NFT offering and a platform and a space and an entire community for hash. So we can get stuff done in this place and kind of, be ahead of the curve on that stuff and be able to, be like, all right, well, fuck, we were paying attention, for once, so, but yeah, we're kind of thinking about stuff in that direction, doing some of those things to kind of bring in that new era.
That's a dope spin on it, man. I really like that approach to it and that kind of like optics approach to it. It's, I think that's super cool. I never really thought about it in terms of that application.
Yep.
But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it'd be cool because we've got legends. So we started thinking about, and then you got Marcus and everything that he's put together there. And then you see the real value in just, I'm super grateful when I get to sit there and talk to Mark. Me and Marcus will get on the phone and do like a Zoom call, and we're on the phone for like 3.5 hours. Like it's because it's just so much shit that I'm picking his fucking head. And, and look at that guy. Like that guy's, he'll fucking do shit where like he'll send me a picture of like a row of freezers, and then like open the freezer or something, and it's just fucking full of melt. Like, he lives this insane life that like, and I don't know about you guys, but anytime I look into a freezer of melt, I'm like, I could sit here for hours, man. Like, all right, where do you start? What do you have? So it's like, yeah, so he's it's a pleasure working with him, man. Like I'm super stoked. I'm looking forward to what we're gonna do with Legends moving forward, and we should be reaching out and kind of talking a little more about it by like June. That's when we're kind of aiming for like June, July to do like the next thing with California, and hopefully it is in NorCal. That's kind of where we're aiming and hoping to do it, and get the next steps in pipeline moving forward with, can't talk about too much of it, but it's, pipeline's kind of evolved into a much different situation for us. It's, it went from like a sales model for farms into its next evolution that we're kind of getting into right now. So we're putting together, working hard on a deck and building some stuff to get to finally for once to go from like the fringe of the rec market into the actual rec market with some stuff. So in a way that's not competitive to the people that we serve and that we work with. So just enhancing and kind of bringing more to the table. So it'd be a fun year to kind of see what the fuck we can pull off with these monkey brains that's full of hash. So
that's super dope.
So as we wrap into our final questions, I've got a few more, but Addison, I really want to know like what your take is on the future of dabbing and resin consumption. Do you think that we're going to see an explosion in the glass community and a more widely accepted, torch, or do you think that we're going to have to evolve our technology into something more acceptable, like a Puffco or better? What are your thoughts in that area?
No, man, I think that it's hash and glass does what it wants. It doesn't ask. It fucking just does what it likes, and it always has. It's, glass artists are, they're exactly that. They're artists. So they're not, you could say the same thing about makers, they're extraction artists, and now you're wrangling fucking artists and you're trying to predict what they do. And it's like, it's a lot easier to just sit back and watch the show and enjoy it and allow it to kind of evolve. And I think that it's not going anywhere. It doesn't ask permission. It's never asked permission for shit. It's like you wake up one morning and some glass blower's like, hey, fuckface, guess what? Marbles are cool now. And you're like, what the fuck? And like, you're like, wait, what? And like balls, there's balls in here. And like, it's just fucking, it tells you what's going on. And someone tell me different, someone fucking tell me that like, there's some dude in an office somewhere that's going to tell us exactly. Like we get high and look at these things for hours, man. Like it's like, you get into just the evolution of this and, what do I think is next? I think like, you know, I think what you're going to see is a lot more, you know, a lot more of the recyclers. That's, you know, things went to tubes and people like tubes and tubes were dope. And, you know, everybody had a tube and those were kind of like the popular thing. And I think now it's kind of coming back. If you look at like Paco just introduced a brand new recycler and these guys are just getting better and better and fucking better at it. And I think it's, you know, it went to like really small rigs for a minute, you know, and now things are kind of getting, you know, like
bouncing out.
Yeah, they're kind of bouncing back up in size and some stuff like that. And, you know, it's really, in terms of the concentrates, I don't think there's much further that you can go. Like nothing makes me vomit more in my mouth than some dude telling me that he's got the next big thing in concentrates. I'm like, all right, fucking Ronald, I'm cool with that. You know, fucking some weird ass shit that doesn't really do it for you, you know, where it's like, hey man, you know, the fucking gas engine is still pretty cool. You know, like you get behind the wheel of an AMG fucking 12-cylinder monster, like 800, 900 horsepower Brabus or something, and fucking take that thing sideways and then brake as quickly as they brake and get on an on-ramp at 120 fucking miles an hour and just run game like a monster and you know, jump up hills like a killer and feel the torque of those cars. Like that shit ain't going anywhere. That's not going to go anywhere. You're just going to refine it and make it better. So I think that like when it comes to our shit and what we do, you know, and you go electric with what we do and you try to, you know, I see these different machines with the fucking this and that, and like none of it, as far as I'm concerned. And if you're honest and you're being truthful and you're not trying to sell your fucking product, like none of it can touch quartz. Like you can't nothing can fuck with a properly capped dab at the right temperature with you know, with your shit correct. It's like I don't like, people are like, oh, I can take my Puffco in the car. Really? Like I can drive with my leg and take a fucking brain altering fucking like an exhale, like I'm gonna fly off the exit fucking dab in my car, and it works. And it's like, and you need one every fucking 2.5 hours maybe, and you get to where you're going, and you're like, yeah, boy, like, you know, it's like I don't need like like no offense to anybody, but get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, don't.
Yes.
Facts.
Don't try to get
Fuck
me.
yes.
And I see so many people, and they're like, "Whoa, bro, have you tried the new with the fucking?" And it's like, really? Like, have you ever had your prostate milked? Like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like,
You don't need to reinvent the fucking wheel.
yeah, dude. And then you see some shit too. Like I saw that shit with again, like, you know, no offense to anybody, but you know, what I love about the internet is that it always fucking wins. And like, you know, I saw some people taking the new colored Puffcos and putting them in kilns and then finding out that it's paint. And it's like, dude, what the fuck, man? At what point did you ever tell anybody when you were selling that thing initially that it's fucking coated in paint?
Is anyone surprised?
Yeah, look, well, here's the thing. Like, I don't use Visine in one fucking eye. Like, so I'm not going to half get high for convenience. Like, it doesn't, no. And here's the other thing too. You got brilliant companies like AVD that invented the oscillating, you know, ohm levels and some of the new technology that you see in hardware. And what that means is you go from 1.8 ohms to 2.4 ohms, and it just oscillates and gets hot and then goes back down to the lower ohm setting and then goes up and then goes back. And those are like the haptic ones that are buzzing. And you're getting, for rosin, you bring it right up to the verge of boil, and then you let it come back down. You're up to the verge. So now you're not like overheating or fucking anything up. And like, sure, that works. But that works for like my greedy, stupid ass when I can't get a dab. But when I'm in a setting and I can take a fucking dab, like, dude, you will never come into my house ever or into my space and find me like making that the preference. And that's just, sure, is that my choice? Of course it is. Is that my discipline? Yes, it is. I'm not going to fucking, I don't want to get half fucking high. And another thing too is for me to take a dab that's proper in size, for me to really get that, like that single fucking tier T-bowed out fucking, like I want to go there. I want to go there every time. And in order, and I'm going to take a dab before we get done. But in order to get there, that's not getting me there. That's like having my fucking 12-year-old give me a back rub. I'm like, hey, okay, what's shiatsu? Like, no, that's not rolving. That's not fucking really addressing the problem and scratching the itch, I guess. Like, and for me, in order to, if someone gives me their Puffco and say I get somewhere and they're like, oh bro, you gotta try it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'll sit there and I'll break that fucking Puffco within 35 minutes. It won't work anymore. Gunked up, fucked up. When I could have sat there with my rig and taken those dabs and put it all away and bounced out and taken a dab when I got home. So I don't see the value.
I also find that there's no flavor on them.
It's robot dabs, dude. Like, it's, what do I expect? You know, like now if you talk about the Pelly nail and you talk about the technology in the Pelly nail, that technology fits into my rig. So I can take a 2013 JD Mapleson fucking egg and I can slap that fucking Pelly nail on it with that specific nail with like the little tail on the nail with the coil on it. And I can hit it. I can smoke melt all day in that thing and leave it on. And it's the perfect fucking hit every time. Or I can grab this and I can fucking melt my face with a slurper. And neither one of those things are even the same language as a Puffco. They don't even fucking, the fuck are you talking about? Like, and I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to sit here for someone's profit and pretend that that's the best fucking way to do this. Like, I don't have to. That's the reason. And if anyone asks why, because I don't have to. I'm not beholden to anybody. I don't have to sit there and, you know, and if I post a video of me hitting some other rig, Deppy doesn't text me and be like, bro, what the fuck? And I know that there are some fucking dudes that are Puffco loyalists. If they get seen taking a picture of some other shit, they're getting a fucking text from some, hey bro, what the fuck, man? It's like, no, go fuck yourself.
That's some fanboy shit.
So
that's some fucking fanboy shit. Like, that's.
I want to ask you about the flavor direction you see the solventless market heading. And then maybe the cannabis market in general, and if they mirror each other or not. But, you know, are there specific fruits or other flavor profiles that you're seeing that you think will become more prominent in the next few years?
I mean, I think as you get into opening up, you know, like look at the burgers and the tickles and the fucking, you know, the burgers are coming on with a lot of different stuff. Masonic is, you know, Edgar's is such a national treasure. Like, he should have full-time security protecting him for all the hash makers, because he really is, like, he's so creative. And I really can't, you know, get into how much I appreciate Edgar and what he does, because he's that energy. He's that vibe. He's like, you know, smart on the tech side too. And doing a lot for all of us, you know, and bringing new stuff in. So I would say, like, what I see as the future is, you know, Wilson crosses and you know, some of the breeders that are in you know, pipeline, like the just bringing shit that's phenomenal numbers, you know, north of 5%, north of 7%. And in terms of just the flavor profiles, you know, we have these conversations on Hash Church sometimes about, like, what is a terpene and what is it made up of? And, like, is it mainly made up of flavonoids, or is it esters? And, you know, esters are in their own group and category, and, like, it's a little more complex. And are they sesquiterpenes or monoterpenes? And you start getting into, like, I love those conversations, because you start to understand specifically subsets of flavor and subsets of scent and where they all come from, and, you know, what is making skunk smell that way, and what is making things turn purple. And, you know, you start getting into all that, because that's all the chemistry that's involved in what's the compounds that are in the plant, which all is accentuated and brought forward in hash production, in solventless hash production specifically. So
are thiols going to continue to be popular?
What's that?
Are thiols just going to continue to get more and more popular?
I think thiols are like, you know, that's like your beginner kind of, ooh, what's this? It's purple, Dave. It's fucking purple. like it's cool, but if you look at our game and the name of our game, like when we see thiols, we see that citrus kind of, so I'm more interested in like, all right, is that related to a flavonoid that's colored? And is that because CBD is purple, it binds with that. That's why, like, when you dab isolate, which is 99.9%, like your isolate, right? It still has that cherry flavor. It's because that flavonoid binds with that compound, that with CBD, and you ain't getting them apart, dude. Like, you don't. So sometimes there's such, they're like that fucking song, like "So Happy Together." Like, they're best friends, man. They ain't never coming apart. And I wonder sometimes if that's what's going on in some of these things. Where, like, with thiol, there's a certain flavonoid that binds with it. And it's like, for us, it's like cocktail. Like, we always see that citrus flavor with anything that's got that purple color. Look at lemon dog shit. Look at any of those fucking things, man. Look at like Twins, which is that new one, and they're all citrusy. They all have that to it. So science, if you pay close enough attention, you'll hear what it's saying. Like, you just got to kind of, not be so emotional.
I wanted to ask you about yields, because you're, through the pipeline and with 800 pound, you're connected with pounds, you're connected with a lot of these breeders. Do you feel as though GMO has set a mark that can only be attained and hovered around, or do you feel there's more genetic potential for higher yields than that?
Yeah, I mean, you think of what lends to the yield. Like, it surprises me that growers that, consider themselves to be good growers, that have been in this game for a long time, flower guys that have been doing this for a long time, that they wouldn't realize that if you don't put your ego aside when you harvest that material for fresh frozen and harvest it specifically for solventless hash making, then you're not doing any justice to the maker at the end. And it's a real truth, and you can see it in test washers. You can take a crew that does harvest to flower and have them harvest the material the same way and then freeze it, right? Send that to a maker, and the maker's like, okay, I can work with it. They'll work with it. And you look at the yields. Then you go and you take that same crew and you educate them on what you do want and don't want to be in the bag as it's getting frozen, before it's getting prepared to go, or as it's being bucked. And once you do that, you could get a 25% higher yield, a full percentage point in your yield, because you taught that crew on what the threshold of what's necessary and what's not necessary in this finished product, and how it should be prepared, and how it should be stored, and how it should be transported. And all those things matter. Like at Pyramid Pipeline, we thought about it and we're like, all right, well, our aim needs to be, let's take 20 makers and let's ask them, what's the most impressive thing you see when you get material that comes in? What's the Mecca Medina, highest level expected? What do you want to see? And when you do that, they all want it to be one certain way. You want that smile on their face. You want them to be you want them to skip lunch to run this shit. You want that response from them. How do you get that? It starts with how the product is harvested and how it is bucked and what's not there and what is there. Because those slight, tiny little, like I said, you do it, you don't do it. We've done it. We've looked at it go from a 4% down to a 3%, down to a 2.9%, because we supervised the capture on the test wash, but didn't supervise the capture on the 100 pounds that got sold. And then when the 100 pounds that got sold, you look at it and it's a 3% yield, not a 4% yield. So now for that maker, that's a 25% difference in yield, 25% difference in volume. That's huge when you got to pay for packaging, you got to pay for everything else. That's why you're aiming for a 4%, because a 4% when it's finished is going to come out as, a profitable product, a product where you got some space, you got some room, you can give it a whirl, you can try it out. And that's kind of, you got to put yourself in everybody's shoes. And, when you're in the farmer's shoes, where are you at? What does the farmer want? When you're in the breeder's shoes, what does the breeder want? The same thing with the maker. Like, what's the maker looking for? Because the maker's not the numbers guy. He's the dude in the lab. He's got the numbers guy coming back and climbing up his ass every fucking 2 weeks when they when they tally everything up and figure out that he just paid $250 a unit for shit that went at, didn't even hit 2%. You can't keep doing that, contrary to what some people think. You can't do that, and sure, it might be great to blend with, but it's not going to be something that's going to really make it, so the yields have to be there, but how the capture occurs and how that's put together on the farm side, that's really what matters. Like that's bullshit in is bullshit out. And if you remove a tiny bit of particulate, remove a tiny bit of plant matter, and then multiply the units by X, you just made a big difference in your final yield. A big difference. It's like the pond, you drop a pebble in the pond. The pebble in the pond goes really strong in solventless hash production. Some asshole uses some fucking oily weird shit, neem or something at the end, and that shit gets into your solvent. Like, fuck, like it's always one asshole in a Prius can fuck everything up, is what I see in life. So it just takes one.
So I wanted to talk a little bit more about hash yields and as you have a real insight on the Cali industry, do you see people calculating their yields differently as being an issue within the community? Or do you think that's something that'll sort itself out? Or do you think we need to scrap the whole system and determine a new way to calculate yields?
No, it sorts itself out because, if you, again, like I just said, it's not like my fucking laboratory that I have in the garage. This is a business, and there's a metric number that connects the material that comes in that we're going to have to pay. Hey, if I'm the type 6, I'm going to have to pay cultivation tax on this when we sell it. Okay, so there's one thing that you got to pay for. You do that all the way down the line, and you look at the percentage that comes out when you run the material. If it's low, it's low. That's it. It's not sustainable. It's business applies to everything. If it's not sustainable, you can't keep doing it. This isn't like when we grew weed and we just added more lights. Like, what's the problem? Add another light. No problem. That's all you fucking did. Get a bigger basin, add another light. Like, that's not what this is. This is different. This is like math. This is real math. And math does not fucking lie. So, the fact that you can't fib that. You can't sit there and fit a square into a fucking circle because it's not profitable. And that's just it. It's like, there's no room for that shit. And when you see guys come in with, for example, like big companies with huge investment, like, for instance, like say tomorrow morning we wake up in California and Laser Cat is coming to California. And Laser Cat's just like, oh, you've never seen the size of this dick swing. Because we've been hanging out in Colorado this whole time, and we just been greenhousing you motherfuckers to death, and we got all the money, and we're coming to Cali. Like, say they came out tomorrow and said, we just got investment into Laser Cat, and we're now a $275 million company coming into California, and we're gonna fucking control it. It's like, no, you're not. You're not. Because without X, Y, Z, and all these other things in place, you're not doing shit. You're not going to do that. It's more than just money. Again, culture eats strategy for breakfast every fucking time. It's always going to do the same thing. And I love it when the med men come in or the blah, 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 blahs come in. What you're just not realizing that there's other ways to make money in business through failure. There are other ways that you don't even know about. Other ways that leave a shell structure and an investment that can then be taken and reinvested in and make even more fucking money. There's shit going on in business that we haven't even wrapped our heads around that looks like failure, but it's actually fucking someone's profiting. And they don't care. They just use your playground to fuck around and do their shit. And until it regulates, until it goes to blah, to that, I watch Shark Tank. I know what the fuck's going on.
Same here, bro. Yeah.
Speaking to the California market just a little bit more, do you see a future where cannabis, like specifically flower, is not graded, valued, or judged based on THC content, or is that something that we're not going to be able to overcome for a very long time?
It's already not. It's already not, because the way you're seeing high numbers is you're getting people taking THCA and adding it as a whole to THC one converted, one not converted, and then calling it a TAC number, a total active cannabinoids number, or a total active, or a TAT number, total active TAT. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You can't combine acidics with non-acidics and then have a whole number at the end without a decarboxylation or an account for decarboxylation. It's just, it's not like, okay, is that how they add the total fat in your sandwich you just ate? No, that's not how they add it, because that's not the math that's used to add that. It's like, what do you measure the size of your dick from your asshole? Like, the fuck are you talking about? Again, you're using incorrect math to get something. So when you can fib that way and say that your shit is blah, 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 42% THC and it's a flower, you're just like, oh, okay, I guess fucking, this is the metaverse we're in. All right, fucking cool. Like, yeah, like, no, dude, it's not even metabolically possible. Again, like, have you ever seen a fucking 13-foot tall person? No. You're probably not going to, because people fucking can't function at 13 feet tall. Your fucking circular system would be trash, and you'd like a fuck, would you be a wreck, dude? It's like, no, you mutant fuck, like, and it's a misrepresentation that people get away with, that skews the reality or the understanding of what's really there, and it allows people to live in this sort of fucking really kind of interesting world that says one thing that's not the other. And to answer the question more directly, like, THC doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't, it doesn't matter at all. It's like, if people really knew the math of smoking, like, you inhale something, okay, whatever the total value of THC that you just inhaled, 30% of it's going to go into your system. Only 30%. Why? Because the way your lungs work, and the fact that only 30% is going to get through. And then even 30%, probably not. And then the fact that you're a pussy and you fucking didn't even take a real hit, probably not. Again, like, you didn't get anything. It's like, me and you could smoke a joint that's 15% THC, and in the end, what the fuck are we really walking away with? Like 22% THC? Like, no, I can take a quarter of a gram dab and get 60 to 70 milligrams of THC in one fucking bang. 70 milligrams of THC in one whack. And like, come on now. We're not even talking about 100 milligram edible converting or nothing. We're talking 60 milligrams to the dome. No wonder why you cry. No wonder why you want to take a shit. No wonder why you're not hungry for the next 20 minutes. You just mega shocked your entire system. Like, it's never felt before. That's what dabs did. Like, people, you know why people were passing out? Because you just mega dosed yourself with fucking THC like you've never been able to before. Like, that's why people were like, oh, fucking. It's like, bro, you just took in 60 milligrams of THC when you were used to smoking shitty ass weed with your buddy and splitting that 150 milligram joint that you might have walked away with fucking 16 milligrams of THC each on. It's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I smoke a joint and I'm like, okay. Like, someone, and then never mind, just the whole hygiene of smoking a joint with someone nowadays. Like, after COVID, I'm like, what are you fucking dumb? We work in the weed business. Like, smoke your own joint. Like, I don't need to smoke a joint. We want to make out when we get finished. Like, no, like, cool. Like, even with rigs now, it's like ISO, and I'll go to a section. Like, if someone wants to hit the rig, I'm like, oh, I have some ISO. Like, I can clean it for you or something. Like, it's just different now, like, I like masks. I think masks are awesome. I think everyone should wear a fucking mask all the time. Like, I don't want to smell anyone's breath. I want to know what my breath smells like, and the mask tells me that too. It's all good, like, I'm not worried about that shit. So that's what's funny too. But yeah.
Can we expect a reoccurrence of the mothership connection with the Legends dinners going forward?
Yes, there's some really cool things. I think what you're going to see moving forward is, keep your eyes peeled for like a series drop where the people that purchase the rigs from anywhere in the country get to go to Legends. Cool things like that, where we, what's cool is that there's no real boundaries for us in terms of the creativity, and keep your eyes peeled for an actual Legends series. And things like that, so keep your eyes peeled for Legends Pacific Northwest with Mothership, and some cool shit like that, where like Deppy's very, very intrigued by it and likes it. He's way into it. He loves hash culture, and for him, the big selling point to him, I think, is always going to be, come smoke hash and hang out. And then when you look at the business component and the business part of it, as long as we figure it out correctly, then we're making sure that the right people are coming to the event that have focus on the glass, that want to get it, and we can enhance that experience, whether it's through NFTs or just through, presenting the glass online beforehand and bringing people's attention to it, drawing in the people that are purchasing, and then those people getting an actual pass to Legends, and us incorporating Mothership that way. But yeah, I think you'll continue to see that. You'll continue to see, Wilkerson and other artists, and continue to, to see a lot of different makers. I mean, for us, there's well over, 100 viable makers that are just solventless guys in California that we could invite. But Legends is always going to be 25 makers. It's never going to go above that number. And there's a reason for that, because we're dealing with a highly intoxicating product that can take away your senses and alter your senses and make it really hard to figure out what is the best. And if you add too many of those to the mix, it's all for what? Like you thought you made it better, you just made it worse. You made it where it's really fucking hard to give your opinion. If you look at Ego Clash, it's successful for the fact that like you're spending 4.5 to 6 hours judging hash. That's what you're doing. Like that's the reality there. It's like hash school, and you're like, oh, it's fucking SATs today, and like you're going in there, and it's real. I don't know if you've ever sat in those rooms or been there. It's dark. It's like, oh man, Cuban's not looking good. Like it's tough, man. It's like half of these guys aren't like nutritional fucking underdogs in the first place. So like you look at them and it's like fucking gray eyes, and they're fucking like they're trying to get through it, and they do, man. I mean, God bless every single one of them. They do, and they judge it, and they find a fucking winner. Like they really do get the input of every person in there, and I have to give it to them. But it's a long, arduous process that takes a long ass fucking time, and it's huge commitment. So for us, it's like, how do we look at that, and how do we like look at it from an experience standpoint, and how do we soften the blow and make it a little cooler? So for us, Mothership's involved. There's some really cool things that we'll talk about that are, and we have talked about them too. And what we've done too is we've gone to a lot of the makers that were at Legends, and we've kept in touch with everybody. And we've communicated a ton and really opened up a community of conversation with these guys to figure out like, what did you like the most, and what could we do better on, and how do we fuck up, and what did we do wrong? And I have we did a full con ops, like, concept of operations after the event, where we sat down and really downloaded a ton of information individually. Like I did my own con ops, Kevin did his own, and then we came together and fucking pushed all that data together and said, oh fuck yeah, we got a lot here. And then went back to Marcus and sat down and talked about, okay, in a perfect world, how could we fix some of these things? And what would our, where did we fuck up in your eyes on this? And how did you fuck up in our eyes on this? And we all kind of put everything on the table. And it's that sort of like openness and honesty that's going to evolve that, and if in any way we can help bring more of that to the industry on other projects and other things, that's what we're looking to do. We're trying to do that with the fresh frozen. We're trying to do that with, with other things too. Like we work with other breeders and other, like I said, we're close with Chris at Compound, close with Sherbinsky, and, close with a bunch of these different guys that we, the conversation is, that's a different animal. That's not like a launch, a to-be launched genetics company. That's a very successful company with relationships with cookies and other intricate things going on. So how do you incorporate these guys? But what's cool is we do have like companies that we invited to Legends that are regulated, under rec, that couldn't be involved because they're like, oh, can't do that. But they're coming back to us and being like, all right, how do we get involved in Legends in the next one? So it's, there's a lot of value there. And I think, I honestly think that like within the next couple of years, what we're hoping to do is create an even bigger environment so that we can have maybe, you know, throw like a larger hash festival that's really celebrates hash and celebrates glass and brings in all of our friends from the glass world and all of our friends from hash culture and hash production. And then that way we can have a festival or something, a multi-day event that's fully regulated, that allows Papas and all these companies to really come in and have a booth that showcases their hash production, and we can have a pub crawl kind of a contest for any person that comes to the event that can purchase hash from these using non-storefront sales licenses, and really create like a big event. And then be able to, if it's multiple days, you know, maybe on the first night we go to Tim and Jonna and we do like secret sesh the first night, and then, you know, the second night we do the Legends of Hash dinner. All the makers are there, but then the second night at your event, the end of your event, you actually have your award ceremony for whoever won the hash event amongst the public, and the general public gets to vote. So there's ways that you can kind of enhance this idea and bring it to a larger platform, and let some people that don't know much about hash or about Legends, show them a stairway to get to that place, and show them kind of a, you know, like, hey, here's what the regulated hash market looks like. And here's, you know, I'm not a big fan of putting music with any of this. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do. I think the music industry is a lot like, you know, it's like fucking butcher shops. It's a real messy business with a lot of weird shit going on. So, you know, music can be played there and you don't have to pay anyone shit, and you can have a lot of fun. But then you also have, like, we have friends like Action and other guys like that would want to be involved, but I don't think they want to come and, you know, fucking, you know, Everlast doesn't want to come and strum a guitar. He'd rather come and take dabs and kind of hang out. And same thing with Action. So I think staying away from the music thing is safe to do, and just focusing on hash. So we're kind of our bigger picture, bigger plan with Marcus and with all of this. And we've already talked to Tim and those guys at Secret Sesh, and we've had these conversations is to do this for a couple of years, and then maybe take it to a bigger stage and take it to something where, and then at that point we can bring Legends back to like what it originally was, which is like, bring your hash, come have dinner, melt only, you know, sift the fucking heads to the illest. Like, you know, your favorite hash maker's favorite hash maker might not have fucking made it in the room. Like, do it that way so that it's like a pinnacle prime. And you do that like every couple years, and then you have your regular Legends of Hash dinners that are opened up. And it's kind of, you know, it's also a really interesting marketplace, because there's education involved. There's the cachet of like having a Legend shirt of a past laminate. There's all these different things that I think makers, you know, that we all consider like super dope and carry clout. So how do you monetize those things without cheapening them and turning them into like, you know, the Pokemon bullshit of something? You know, you want it to keep its value, and no offense to Pokemon, but, you know, overly oversaturated understanding of something. So, but yeah, I think that's, you know, we're looking to evolve it and bring it to a larger scale. We're looking to, you know, to let Marcus monetize it and make money. And of course we're always looking to make money, because we have to make a living. But like, you know, I've always said, like, I think it's a quote from, I don't know who the fuck it's a quote from, but it's like, make a living while you make a difference, you know, and everything you do, you kind of keep it in that lane, and like, no one can say shit to you. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah,
I need to take a dab.
Yeah, let's have dabs. Let's take dabs.
Bro, you've been on just a tear, like just laying it down.
I'm
like,
just.
This has been dope. No, this has been dope.
You,
like having you on's been lit. Like seeing the way that you see things, and the way that you've experienced things, and the way you like your lens. Awesome, because, you know, like, I was a legacy guy. I came into the legal market, and I'm kind of working my way up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that you're saying, I'm like, oh my God, like it's resonating deep with me. And it's just like, man, like, not only are these things that that I struggle with in my professional life, or that I've struggled with in my personal life, it's dope to see that, like, honestly, you've come with some really creative solutions too, and are working past it. So
thank you.
It's killer, bro.
Yeah, it's like hash is a tribe. Act accordingly is kind of what it comes down to. Don't get in here and start because you're gonna get called out. You're gonna get clowned out. You're gonna get like cool guy out of the room super fast. But there's room for everybody. It's, you know, I love when you go to an event and you see like super fucking, you know, Mikey likes it, or some crazy fucking heady boy with a fucking insane buck, and then some random kid just walks up and is like, "Can I have a dab?" And they're like, "Yeah, come here, fucking." And this kid's hitting a fucking $250,000 piece of glass, and like that's community. That's like this tribe, you know, that protects its young and kind of sticks together, and like I love that part about it, and I see it in that way because it's always that way. It's always, for me, it's like, you know, your friends have these magic tokens that they hand to each other, and the magic tokens are what they made, and it's like you'll get into a room and someone's like, "Dude, look at this," and you're like, "What the fuck?" And oh my god, and then, you know, it's like me and Kevin went to 710 on Monday. We had some meetings with Brad for some stuff that we were talking with them about, and it was great. Like Skelly was there, Brad was there. We sat down, and it's fucking nuts, dude. Like you walk through this like fucking Madison Avenue office setting of glass, and every room has a fucking, you know, the 710 rug and a neon thing, and you're going through marketing and you're going through all this, and you get into the back and you sit into this room, and it was a fucking great feeling because it's like we're sitting in the office and we're conducting business how we conduct business, and we have a meeting to discuss a product that we're bringing in from an international, you know, licensing deal. But as soon as we get done talking business, there's dab rights on the table, and there's, you know, beautiful pieces of glass, and we're talking and we take some dabs, and Brad's like, "Oh, look at these new ones." And, you know, we're dabbing Randy Watson, and fucking next thing you know, it's they're like, "Oh, we got this Q-tip thing that can fucking see your hand and it opens up." He puts key. I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then they made this. This is crazy. They created this. So check this out. So this is a stain pen oil.
That's cool.
And it has ISO in it. And then these pads attach to the bottom, and you squeeze it and ISO comes out, and then you can use it to like get dab stains out of your clothing.
Yo, what?
That's
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, like cool shit, you know, just inventing cool. So they got an accessories line that they're coming out with now. But just getting to go there and getting to see this, and then, you know, leaving there and going out, you know, they're in the Mercedes-Benz building in fucking Beverly Hills, and like you leave there and you're like, "Oh, hey," you walk out of that place and you're just like, wow, that's our industry. Like this is where we are, specifically hash. This is where our community is. And there's cool fucking people that love this hair, you know, this whole culture so much that that's where their head is. And they have so much leeway in their company that the numbers guy needs to shut the fuck up because we just made a fucking an oil stain pen, okay? Like, calm down, numbers guy. This is gonna work. Like, that's us winning collectively as a team, you know, as a community. That's all of us winning. And like, you know, our fucking community isn't dried flour in Mylar bags. Like, it's not like bait and switch packaging. That's not our fucking industry. You know, like the post I made the other day, like, the nail tells you everything that the fucking grower didn't do. Like, this shit is so provable to the point where, like, I can look at the nail afterward, and no matter what my brain told me, that nail's not going to lie to me. Sure, I may recognize that I hit it at too high of a heat, and I need to calm down a bit and change my temps, you know, all these things. But like, it doesn't lie, and like, it's a very honest industry that we're in. Our sect of the industry, I consider it to be like, it's the most coveted part. It's the still pure protected part, you know, because the breeders breeding mostly for flower and for that other end of the industry. But now we're showing them that, like, hey, there's value here too, and you can diversify your offering by providing stuff for us as well. And then look at all this does. And then never mind, if you look at data right now, the whole vacuum that dab, you know, so the way they categorize all this in terms of commerce is they look at it and they say the concentrate market, right? But a percentage of the concentrate market is dabbable, and a percentage of the concentrate market is like vapor, okay? When you look at that market over the last year or 2 years, there was a huge dip in vapor because distillate went away in a sense. But when you look now and you see what's regaining the most strength in the market, two things: rosin pre-rolls and rosin fucking dabble and rosin vape pens.
Interesting.
just screaming up in numbers. And I'm talking like, dude, the dabbable, what we figured out right now in California, dabbable market is roughly $300 million, like 290 something $million. So of that, what percentage of it is rosin? And when you look at that, you're at about 95 million, close to like $100 million just in solventless sales.
That's really good.
So when you break it all down and you look at it, and we're doing this stuff so that we can get an understanding of like what's true value in our industry, what's really going on. It makes it tough sometimes because some of these data guys, they're skewing the data in a certain way to benefit their customer. Because the customer's taking the data and presenting it to investors to get more money. And if you can make it look like one thing, then you can obviously get it. So when you really look at the true data, those numbers could be a little different than what we're talking about. It could be even less, it could be maybe 50 to 60 million or something like that instead of 90 something million. So, but still, we're talking about a lot of money and trends, like what's happening in there. And if you're seeing way more business come back from solventless now, then you need more inputs and you need better inputs and you need a better supply chain to be able to get that stuff going. And the one thing we're never going to get rid of is bullshitters. The one thing we're never going to get rid of is like hucksters and charlatans and liars and all that shit. But I like where we're at because there's truth in what we do. You can't fudge these numbers. You can't bullshit this stuff, and there's a lot of bullshit in a lot of other ends of our industry. So, it's like, I don't know, if someone I respect tells me that this hash that they hand me is good and I know it's trash, I'm done respecting that person. I'm like, okay, well, cool. You found your number. I'm like, you found your number, dog. Like, cool.
Yeah,
all right.
I got you. Like, I got you. Or somebody, 100%. What are you dabbing on right now?
Me?
Yeah. Other way. Swollen heads. Woo.
Nice.
I like the wood grain.
That looks beautiful.
Yeah, those are nice. This is what I was dabbing on last night. I think I posted a video of it. I took Frosties, Papa's, and another one. And then those are here. Just some big flags from yesterday. We'll see what happens with those later.
Are you exclusively smoking hash like those flags off your e-nail, and then you smoke rosin off your rigs?
Yeah, I won't smoke melt in a slurper.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's not, personally, I just don't think it's the best way for me to consume it. Like my favorite thing on a slurper, no, not even kidding, what I think is the best is like some fresh diamonds from Diamond Baron of like weird shit that Dave will make. Straight BHO, like, no, I have no problem with it.
I was just going to ask that if you're done with BHO, if you're still dabbing BHO.
No, not at all. I mean, it just depends, man. It's like it's all an input. It's like, protein's protein, and you might have a favorite one, but it's still just protein. And I look at it as like, if I want to get fucking roasted, like if I'm looking to like forget where they touched me, I'm going for BHO, like that's what I'm going for. But diamonds with some sauce, like my buddy owns and we work really closely with Holy Water, so he'll send me some shit sometimes that's just fucking beautiful.
That tech is super cool,
dude. Or I'll run into like the guys from like Paper Planes, and they give me some cheap ass fucking Kyle will give me like this cheap ass shatter, and it'll be like an OG shatter, and I'll dab that and be like, fuck yeah. So like, it doesn't matter. It's just, some of my favorite stuff now is even like, one of my favorites is Secret Society Hash Co. out of Vegas. They're not even Cali kids. They have like, and the reason for that and the reason I love it is because you've got guys who are hunting strains from the Colorado market, the California market, and the New Mexico market. And so you see different genetics in there. So if you're able to get stuff from Vegas, if you're able to get stuff from Los Angeles, if you're able to get stuff from Colorado, what you're really getting is different cultivars that are popular in those regions. So you can expand what you're trying and get into it. So I've been really liking the liking their stuff. I love Taylor's stuff from T Beazle, like his shit, like lemon kombucha, and some of the new stuff's fucking crazy. From like Little Lake Valley Seed Co. One of my favorites is Resin. You know, Alex Poofer is like one of my best friends, and he's in town here, and he'll come through with some 90U of like sour diesel, like their reserve stuff, which is, and I'll be honest, like I'm not one of those guys who's going to pretend that like a full spec is my favorite. Like I like 90-120, like that's my favorite. It happens to have like better flavor, better taste, and it's kind of bougie, but it is, you know, once you get to understand, like what the cream really is. 90-120 tends to, if you every time you make a run, if you took a little bit of the 90-120 and you put it together and put it aside, and then full spec'd everything and kept doing that, and then was letting everyone try everything, everyone would go towards the 90-120. There's no, you know, it's just prime. It's just for heads and everything else. It just has a better flavor. But if you have a sustainable business, can you really do that? You know, and if you're not etching out etching out a margin for that stuff, then you're taking away from your bulk on your other side. So you got to.
I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about that, and I want to see, you know, what innovation are you seeing on utilizing the off bags, you know, the undesirable microns and second presses in the market. Are you seeing any really outstanding innovation where makers are turning, you know, what would be something that would be of low value and you know, referred to as food grade in our industry into something that they can turn into a higher value product?
Yeah, like my hat goes off to 710 and to Pappas for, you know, introducing strain specific edibles. And that's a great way to pass on, you know, that material and make sure, like, you know, the tail to nose theory and concept of ancestral living is applied to cannabis as well. And like, you're using every fucking thing you got there. And like, when you go ahead and now, like, dude, I was blown away. Like, even being associated with Chiba Chews and Green Hornets, and, you know, they're not at a place yet where they're offering a solventless specific, strain specific solventless edible in California. But when I tried, you know, Brad sent us the 710 Labs ones. I ate all 100 milligrams in like 5 minutes with the Papa Select. Like, they sent me some of theirs, and like I ate all of them when they sent them to me. They gave me like a bag of them with like, bro, and it was like pineapple. There was one that they had that was like, and if you work with hash a lot and you get it on your fingers, you're always like you eat it, and then it's in your mouth and it's like stuck to your tooth and it's doing its thing, right? It's in your mouth, and you've introduced a non-water soluble compound into a water soluble situation, right? And that's really what you did. But it kind of floats around and you can taste it. And certain strains, like, you know, like fucking pineapple kush and different things like that, are very affy and have a lot of flavor to them. What these guys are doing is they're taking flavoring and pairing it with that flavor and finding the perfect place with the fruit flavor, the pectin fruit flavor, because a lot of these are like all pectin, no gelatin. And like I said, I got to take my hat off to them. Like, they will slide you into a fucking edible coma pretty easily too, because it's a great way to transfer those compounds. It's a great way to use that material. And they're using like the 45 and the other stuff, the 25, the things that are less desirable. There's not so much concern about how it looks in terms of aesthetics or color. It's just about the taste, and that it's there, and that there's actives there that you're able to benefit from. So, you know, they heat that stuff up, they activate it, they put it in there. And I think edibles is really where you're going to see, and like, again, like, dude, fucking Taylor from T Beazle. I don't know if you follow his pages. Like, he has like food brands. Like, he's got fucking hot sauce, and he's making cheesecakes. And he hits me up one day and he's like, "Oh, I made you some ice cream. It's fucking 200 or 300 milligrams." And I'm like, I'm not fucking eating that. Like, what are you trying to do, bro? Like, you're binding this shit with fat and you're going to get, and I'll die. Like, I can't eat that ice cream. He's like, "Oh man, whatever." And it's like, but the point is you've got guys that are fucking incredible hash makers that are really, really good at what they do, that are now getting into confections and getting into other stuff and like steam distillation of terpenes and then re-adding that back to a gummy along with the 25 and the 45. Like I'm just seeing cool ass shit that's really, really tasty. My least favorite thing that I'm seeing, my least favorite thing that I'm seeing, and I said it before, is like the fucking dude who is like MJ BizConning you, and he's telling you about the new, bro, I'm gonna fuck right now. We got a product we're working on, and that's like, and that's usually the last time I ever hear about it too, which is cool. You know, like, bro, you know, we're gonna change the whole industry. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. But what I love about the rosin stuff and the edibles is that it hasn't been that way. It's really honest. It's really straightforward and kind of cool. And like, and fucking dude, for like trap brands like Ogre with like s'mores and shit, where like they give you this kit and then you use your torch to fucking heat up the s'more while you're for your edible and shit. Like, dude,
who are the guys in Cali who have like the shaman edibles and they almost have like a spicy chili in their edible? And oh man, I had one and it was so, I'm gonna forget. I'll remember their name later, but I can't remember.
I think it is Ogre. They had like the papaya.
Yeah, but there was like little. Oh man, it was the most like, it was so good. I think that might have been them, man. I was so impressed by that.
They did it. I think there was there's a couple different ones, man, that are really just getting creative. And then the other thing too is like caps. You know, getting into like rosin caps that are just fully, you know, you're getting a non-gelatin capsule with just rosin oil in it. And, you know, a lot of people are really digging that too, because you are getting a full spectrum. Some of those guys are taking full micron runs, you know, then putting it into the oven, getting it to turn to a jelly, and then, you know, siphoning off of it, and then getting that to go into like, you know, sometimes a coconut oil or something. A lot of guys are kind of moving away from the coconut oil into some other different seed oils that are kind of interesting. But Nicky T posted a thing the other day about another oil that was like a different one. But yeah, just seeing like cool
Todd
shit.
Always talks about hemp seed oil. Todd's always like, it's hemp seed oil. It's the best thing to use. And I've been in his kitchen for that lecture and loved every moment.
It's good for your beard.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So I'm gonna mute for a second while I heat this thing up because I don't want to do it. So I don't know if you guys have like, you know, sponsor or something, but I'll do this. And
get jabbed up. I guess we're putting you on the spot so you don't have breaks to take your dab.
I got you. I'll mute you.
You'll mute me? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So
I think it's a really cool perspective to see from somebody who touches a lot of hash makers. So I think that's really cool perspective on the Cali market for sure.
So go ahead.
I'm very excited to get Van Gyption on the I think it's the 16th if I'm remembering correctly, and talk more about that. He's been changing the game up here in Canada with those hash cones. And he's been utilizing a lot of those off microns and creating some really cool products. So I'm really excited to have him on and chat with him. I think more and more people are going to get to know him, and you know, he's going to make a pretty big impact on the market. So I'm pretty excited to have him on and talk about that, because I think he's one of the guys who's doing unique stuff in a way that is kind of an homage to what was done 10, 11 years ago by guys like Marcus, but is being curated in a way in the Canadian space that is resonating really well with with legacy consumers. I mean, I smoke minimal amounts of flower, but smoking those hash wraps is an absolute delight. It's super smooth. You know, you can take it all the way down, and I got one. I immediately wanted more, and so I get what the hype is about there, and I'm super excited to have Van Gyption on, and really excited to chat with him. Big dab time. I could take another.
I love how you stand up to dab. It's like you're getting
Reset
ready.
the
You know
brain.
you're gonna get your ass kicked and sit back down.
Well, I always breathe too. I'm like, it's like yoga.
Yeah, you can't
I see
bend
people
over to
like get ready for a dab and they're not breathing, and I'm like, dude, how do you expect to take a big dab if you're not like getting it all to work? You know?
Jameson, you hear that? Breath control.
I guess I gotta. Well, at least I lift it to me. I mean, what I found is if I ever try to like come down to a table to do a dab, you can't really, breathe into it. So you wanna lift the piece up. If it's not too expensive, I'll lift it up. If it's over $20,000, I'll probably leave it on the table.
It all breaks at some point.
I hope not, bro. I fucking hope not. Not say that again, please.
Well, eventually, at some point in time, it definitely.
As long as it's not in my hands.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say your lifetime.
Right. Yeah, that's the other side.
Yeah. You've got a Wednesday show coming up too.
Yeah, we're talking to George Greenthumb. Super stoked about that. Backwash Tech. Gonna go down the rabbit hole with George. He runs LA Family Farms, so he does true single source in-house processing and has given out a lot of tech to a lot of homies. The Egyptian being one of them, and so yeah, we're super stoked to have George on Wednesday. No, I think, what's Sunday? Is Sunday Papa Select?
Oh, what's that?
No, I was just asking Brian. We've got.
Hold on, I'll have to look.
Just talking about the lineup of guests we're having on while you were taking your dab. But I wanted to ask you, Addison, as we wrap up, what advice do you have for individuals who have been in the industry and are looking to stay in the industry, and opposed to what advice you have for people looking to get into the industry who are coming from other industries right now?
I think be realistic again. Like just because you have access to somebody and you can reach out to them doesn't mean that it's their responsibility to open doors for you and give you an opportunity. I think it's everyone wants everything right away. You think why TikTok became so popular is because they figured out a way to make a video get fucking 40,000 views in 40 seconds and make the person think that they're the most popular person in the world. So one thing is be realistic, understand that the people you might be talking to or the people that you're talking to that are successful at this, the odds against them and the prize that they had in front of them wasn't always the same thing. And the restrictions and the ramifications for what they do hasn't always been the same thing. So the odds have changed. The goalposts have moved, and some of these people are still fucking here. They're still doing it. They've adjusted to it. They've taken, Nietzsche's fucking quote to the next level, that the only constant is change. And, it hasn't taken them off. And what's amazing about it, what I think is really cool is that you're talking about mavericks, so when people are reaching out and they're DMing people online and they're like, hey, I got a question for you. Just remember too, that those people own consulting companies and then make money by answering questions. So, the way you present yourself and with respect and a lot of people are good at it. And cause I see it all the time, but just remember that like the information that you're getting or asking for free is how that person puts oil on their nail or, pays their rent. So, be kind and nice and be realistic, of course. Put yourself in that position, how you would be. But really just whatever, understand yourself and know what you're good at. We're all good at different stuff. And whatever you're good at, what's cool about cannabis is that it's necessary. You need accountants and you need bean counters, and you need people that motivate people. You need general managers. You need all these different people that, and whatever you're working at, whatever you're doing, what always helped me in life is remember, if you're the hardest fucking working person in the room all the time, that's the key. If you're when you get done with work and you leave, if you're a bud tender and you go home and you find out that you've got new strains coming in next week from someone you've never heard of, then research it. Educate yourself on things and be the most knowledgeable, hardest working person in the room, and be humble and you know, bring all that stuff to the table. And that's how you get a job, is by being like a good candidate and not fucking, you know, being a rumor mill and all these other fucking things. And like be observant, like look around and see what other people they're doing that's not working, and don't do that shit, you know, and be honest. But yeah, I mean, I think that just don't be afraid to ask. Like a closed mouth does not get fed, but don't run in there just, you know, some people try to like get somebody's attention in the wrong way. And then it's like, oh, I'm just fucking around, bro. And it's like, all right, well, okay, you know. So, but I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think there's a ton of different jobs that people can get into, and be patient and understand that, you know, you may want to be the extractor or the top guy, but you're going to come in as, you know, the packaging dude, and just be humble and understand that like none of us got to where we're at by, you know, overnight and anything like that. And the respect is earned that people have. So you got to be willing to earn that respect. And like a cool thing I learned the other day when I was talking to you guys about, and it's good to end it on this too, is like we were talking about manifestation, you know, and those things. And like you can't share too much about it because the negative perspective of it is going to affect it. But the other thing is that, and I posted about this, that like you have to envision yourself doing that work.
Yeah.
You can't just envision yourself and picture all these great things in your life, because the next question is going to be, why do you deserve that? And the answer always to why you deserve it is all the fucking hard work you did to get it. That's always the answer, and it's always going to be the answer. So like when you want to picture this amazing fucking life, like say you want to come into cannabis, you want to be in the industry, and you want to be, you know, the next Swerve and Breeder or whoever, you know, you want to be the next Chris from Compound or Stravinsky, or maybe you want to be the next Brandon from, you know, third gen, who's a breeder and a hash maker, maybe whoever, you know, you or myself. And just look at the reality of that situation again, and how much work it takes. So now, instead of just envisioning the prize, envision all the fucking work. Because what they say is that when it comes time to put in the work, because you've envisioned it already and you know it's there, you know what to expect, and you're willing to do it, and you don't let yourself down. And that's like just something I just learned the other day, and it made so much fucking sense. I was like, motherfucker, I've always envisioned just winning the lottery and what I would say. I never even envisioned myself walking into the fucking store and buying the ticket. Like, you know, like you gotta, the whole picture, the universe wants to hear that whole fucking story so that it can put the punctuation on it. So,
Well, that's awesome. How can people find you? Where's 800 Pounds Mantra? Like, is that .com?
Yeah, you can go to 800poundsmantra.com. You can go to pyramidpipeline.com. You can go to Instagram at Pyramid Pipeline or 800 Pounds Mantra. If you want to look at the stupid shit that I'm doing, you can go to terphova on Instagram, or you can go to Kevin's Instagram, which is Kevin Lives Life. And then Kevin also has a photography one, Kevin Shoots Life. And if you get a chance, this if I'm going to promote anything, Kevin made some NFTs that are kind of cool. He put those out. So if you get a chance, go take a look at Kev's NFTs and maybe grab one of those and support him. But yeah,
MFD for that, right? He did that.
Yeah. It was super dope.
That's awesome. Addison, thank you so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate all the insight.
Much appreciate you.
I can't say it enough. Thank you, man. I really enjoyed this time.
Thank you, guys. Now that all the pressure's off, I'm going to take a regular dab and I'll get to do some stuff. So.
Yeah. Go have a ripper. All right.
Thank you, guys, man.
Much love, man. Thanks again.
Appreciate you guys. Be well.
Thanks again for tuning in, everybody.